Chapter 1596. Lu Yi suddenly recalled why the insectoids had acted so strangely at the start of the battle. They hadn't concentrated their forces in one direction but had instead spread them out. It seemed like a brainless move, but in reality, it was to divert the attention of the cultivators from the four galaxies so that the bloodlings could surround the battlefield. Reality proved that their plan was very successful. All the cultivators from the four galaxies, including those from the three realms on Lu Ye's side, were immersed in the joy of killing the insectoids. They didn't pay much attention to the battle outside. That was until the bloodlings appeared. But by then, there was no point in noticing. Waves of blood came from all directions at an extremely fast speed. This speed was clearly due to the fact that there was an expert controlling the sea of blood. In just a short moment, the entire battlefield was practically surrounded by the sea of blood. However, the sea of blood showed no signs of stopping. It seemed as if it was going to envelop the entire battlefield. Once the blood sea descended, the human cultivators would be forced into a passive position. The bloodlings and insectoids, on the other hand, would be like fish in water. Lu Yi had used the blood sea to kill enemies before, so he was very familiar with its mysteries. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. His first thought was to quickly gather the cultivators of the three realms and escape. The blood sea hadn't completely surrounded them yet, so there was still a gap. They might still have a chance. However, Kong Cheng's previous arrangements had foiled his plans. The cultivators of the three realms were scattered all over the battlefield. It was impossible for him to gather everyone in a short time. Under such circumstances, not to mention gathering the cultivators of the three dimensions in a short period of time, even gathering the cultivators of the 9 provinces was utterly impossible. Everyone, including the cultivators of the 4 galaxies, were swept into the battle and were utterly unable to escape easily. What should I do? Lu Yi asked himself over and over again, but he couldn't think of a solution. He also thought of an even more serious consequence. If the insectoids and bloodlings really took over the 4 galaxies, the Jade Conch tribe would be in danger. When the time came, the 2 races would have to go through the Thousand Hills Grave and the Chaotic Explosion Zone to explore the outside world. Once they entered the Jade Conch galaxy, it could be said that the Jade Conch tribe and Apiron were basically interdependent. An even more violent energy fluctuation than before came from the insectoid nest. Lu Yi instinctively turned to look and saw that the nest had suddenly shattered. Even though the hive was extremely sturdy, it was unable to withstand the constant battle between the Sunshine State cultivators. At this moment, it finally exploded into pieces. 3 of them were Ningbu Ao, Li Guan, and Luo Xie of Big Luo. Of the other 3, 2 were obviously Hikari from the Zerg, and 1 was obviously a blood breed. He looked 70% similar to Bai Jin, but compared to Bai Jin, he was obviously much taller, and his skin was blood red. At this moment, the 6 Rizhao were fighting fiercely against each other. When the cultivators of the mysterious North Star system didn't see Qinzong's figure, they finally realized that Qinzong had fallen. The feelings of the cultivators of Jingyue constellation were even more complicated. Bai Jin, who was originally a mainstay of this world, was actually a vampire in disguise. Moreover, he had killed an ally of Rizhao, which made them feel ashamed and uneasy. As the terrifying energy spread, 3 rays of blood-red light came from different directions from the sea of blood. All 3 rays of blood-red light emanated the aura of a Sunshine State cultivator. This scene made the hearts of all the cultivators turn cold. They knew that this was really the end. The blood breed had sent 3 Sunshine State cultivators, and these were only the ones who had shown their faces. No one knew if there were others who hadn't shown their faces yet. In a one-on-one fight, Ningbu Ao and the others had been able to hold their ground. But now that the 3 blood breeds had joined the battle, it was their turn to fight 2 Sunshine State cultivators. The situation was not looking good. "Fellow cultivator Lu, come with me." Suddenly, a Yu Yao rushed toward Lu Yi with a panicked expression. As he approached, he shouted. Judging by the spiritual energy fluctuations around him, he was obviously an early Yu Yao. Lu Yi turned his head and glanced at him. He responded with a yes and charged straight at him. The moment they drew near, the panic on the Yu Yao's face disappeared. He reached out to grab Lu Yi. Magic energy surged in his palm, forming a vortex. Immediately, an invisible force pulled Lu Ye's body. Lu Ye's expression didn't change. He seemed to have expected this. His body glowed with blood-red light, and in an instant, a sea of blood spread out, enveloping him and Yu Yao. The other party clearly hadn't expected such a turn of events. He was caught off guard by the sea of blood. He was shocked. As far as he knew, Lu Yi was a weapon cultivator. It was rare for him to be able to use such an exquisite blood Dao secret technique. But in the next moment, Yu Yao's expression changed. That was because the sea of blood emanated an incomparably strong pressure that he couldn't resist. Under the cover of this mysterious pressure, Yu Yao felt his strength being greatly suppressed. The flow of magic energy in his body was obscure, and even his blood and qi seemed to be on the verge of freezing. Then a saber light flashed and slashed at his neck. Even the mountain plate blade enhanced with a divine edge couldn't cut off Yu Yao's head. It only cut halfway in. It was obvious how strong his physique was. Yu Yao's expression was pained. He cocked his head and looked at Lu Yi in disbelief. A holy seed? This weapon cultivator in front of him didn't use any blood Dao secret technique. It was the purest blood seed technique of the blood tribe. What made him even more uneasy was that the sea of blood was surging with a holy aura so strong that it was almost tangible. He didn't even dare to think about it. How could there be a holy seed with such a strong holy aura in this world? How much holy blood did one refine to reach this level? Fellow Taoist, please have mercy. I'm a member of the blood tribe. Yu Yao hurriedly cried out in panic. Although he didn't understand why Lu Yi was a holy seed, since he was a holy seed, he was one of them. Lu Ye's expression was indifferent. Got it. His other hand suddenly grabbed the mountain plate blade's hilt. He exerted force with both hands, and the blade, which was half buried in Yu Yao's neck, slashed down. Yu Yao's head flew into the air, and his eyes were wide open as he died with remaining grievances. He really didn't understand why Lu Yi would still kill him even after he had revealed his identity as a member of the blood tribe. The sea of blood disappeared, and Lu Ye's figure appeared. The mountain plate blade wasn't stained by a single drop of blood. He had sensed it the moment Yu Yao approached him. This Yu Yao gave him a similar feeling to Bai Jin, so he immediately understood that she was also a member of the blood tribe in disguise. If it were an ordinary Yu Yao, Lu Yi wouldn't have been able to kill her so easily. However, Yu Yao of the blood tribe was his nemesis. Back when he left the Blue Jade realm, a late-stage Yu Yao had chased after him, but he had killed that Yu Yao. This time, he was facing an early-stage Yu Yao. Of course, he was only able to kill late-stage Yu Yao thanks to Li Shang's soul battle. Otherwise, with his strength at the time, he wouldn't have been able to do anything to her. But things were different now. The mountain plate blade was transformed from pyrolite, and it was incomparably sharp. Yu Yao's physical body was strong, but it was suppressed by the holy aura. She couldn't block pyrolite's attack at all. Chaos, everything was in chaos. Li Guan had already ordered the Quiet Moon cultivators to return to the battleship and wait for further orders. Now that the blood tribe had launched a large-scale attack, the situation became even more chaotic. It was impossible for the cultivators of Quiet Moon to return to the warships. There was no telling how many vampires were hiding among them. Therefore, the cultivators of the other 3 galaxies had their hands tied when fighting against the enemy. No one knew if they would be ambushed secretly. Lu Yi gazed at the chaotic battlefield and the sea of blood that was spreading out from all directions. He knew that if he didn't do something now, the allied forces of the 4 star systems and the cultivators of the 3 realms would all die here. In fact, even he himself might not be able to escape alive. However, on such a large battlefield, even if he was a cultivator of the absolute Sunshine realm, would he have the ability to turn the tide, much less a single constellation realm cultivator? Lu Yi suddenly flipped his hand, and something appeared in his palm. He lowered his head and glanced at it. He didn't know if his idea would work or not, and even if it did, it was hard to say how effective it would be. However, since things had already come to this point, he could only try everything he could. He put the thing in his hand to his mouth and pressed a few sound holes with his fingers. He stirred his breath and gently blew on it. Even in the starry sky, there was a low sound coming from the thing in his hand. The surrounding cultivators looked over curiously in panic. No one knew why Lu Yi would take out a bone sun and play it in such a terrible way. However, no one was paying attention to him anymore. As the sea of blood approached, everyone was thinking about how to protect themselves. A figure suddenly moved to Lu Ye's side. It was Wuxia. She looked fine, and the spear in her hand was still stained with blood. It should be the result of the battle with the insect tribe. After all, she was in the late stage of the full moon realm. Without the absolute sunshine, almost no one on the battlefield could pose a threat to her life. Looking at Lu Yi, Wuxia looked guilty. "I'm sorry." Kong Cheng had originally wanted them to head to a Pylon first, and discuss the matter of setting off for the Wanxiang Sea after the battle was over. However, Wuxia felt that this was a rare opportunity, and wanted to join in to experience it. Now that she had joined in on the fun, things had turned out well. The cultivators of the three realms had set off from the Qingli Dao world with great ambition, but they were still halfway there and were about to be wiped out by the insect tribe and the blood clan. Lu Yi continued to play the bone sun for a while before putting it away in disappointment. He said, "Joining the battle here was the decision of me and my friend. If there are any consequences, we will bear them together. You don't have to blame yourself. Even if we really go to indefinite first, we may not be able to avoid this disaster. After the insect tribe and the blood clan take over the Four Directions galaxy, they will first deal with the indefinite galaxy. When that happens, we will also be involved in it. Moreover, once the insect tribe and the blood clan take over the Four Directions galaxy, the first to suffer would be the Jade Snail galaxy. My friend, please help me gather the three realms." Chapter 1597. Team D9 was fighting hard against the enemy, and there were two other teams from the 9 states beside them. The situation was chaotic, and the cultivators from the 4 constellations were at a loss. However, the cultivators from the 9 states had experienced many big and small battles, so they had a certain ability to adapt. In the face of such sudden changes, they performed much better than the cultivators from the 4 constellations. They were trying to find a way to gather, but unfortunately, because they were too scattered, only 2 teams met up with Team D9. The other teams also adhered to the principle of proximity and moved closer to each other. Their approach undoubtedly influenced the cultivators from the Qingli Dao world and the Yukong world, and they all gathered towards the teams from the 9 states. "Follow me." Lu Yi came to the side of Team D9, called out, and slashed forward with his saber. The crowd did not say a word and followed closely. Lu Ye's figure was like a shuttle, moving forward on the battlefield. The blood kindred had not spread the sea of blood to the center of the battlefield for the time being, only completing the encirclement on the periphery. The insect clan on this side of the battlefield was already at a disadvantage, so there was not much resistance along the way. The more he moved forward, the more cultivators from the 3 realms followed behind him. Not only that, even the cultivators from the 4 constellations voluntarily joined in, making the group of cultivators behind Lu Yi stronger and stronger. Time was too short, and Lu Yi had no time to find all the cultivators from the 3 realms. Seeing that the sea of blood of the blood kindred had already penetrated, he had no choice but to lead the cultivators behind him back to the location of a warship. Second senior sister Shui Yuan and Hua Si were on this warship. The 2 of them were medical cultivators and were not good at fighting, so they did not enter the battlefield during the previous battle, but stayed on the warship to wait for orders. This way, if there were injured cultivators, they could return to the warship to be treated. Yaya was also left on this warship by Lu Yi and handed over to Hua Si to take care of. If there was a relatively safe place on the entire battlefield, it would be this warship. When Lu Yi led a large group of cultivators back, Wuxia also rushed back. She gathered more cultivators from the 3 realms. After all, her cultivation was higher and she could move faster. Lu Yi swept his gaze over the area, his expression grim. Although he and Wuxia had hurried over, they had still only gathered about half of the cultivators of the 3 realms. At this time, it was unrealistic for them to send a message to gather the others. There were battles everywhere. Not to mention whether the cultivators of the three realms had the time to investigate the sound talismans. Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to rush over without sufficient strength. Luan Xiao hurriedly said, "I'll go look for it again. I'll have to trouble fellow Taoists to stay here." Lu Yi quickly stopped her. "Stay here, I'll go look for it." Lu Yi quickly stopped her. "You stay here, I'll go look for it." Once the Sea of Blood was completely unleashed, Luan Xiao would be hard-pressed to do anything even though she was at the Moon Jade late stage. Moreover, because her cultivation was higher, it was very likely that she would be targeted by the powerful beings of the Blood Tribe. Lu Yi himself, on the other hand, was only a late-stage constellation realm cultivator. He also had the Blood Race's secret arts, so it was easier for him to do things. Leaving Luan Xiao here was undoubtedly the safer choice. Lu Yi then looked at Luan Qiue. "Junior sister, I'll leave this to you. If they wanted to fight against the Blood Tribe in the Sea of Blood, using the same Blood Race's secret arts was undoubtedly the best way." Lu Yi wanted to find the cultivators of the three realms who had been separated, so Luan Qiue just happened to stay here to assist Luan Xiao. Along the way, Lu Yi had already taught Luan Qiue the Holy Convergence Technique and the Blood Cry Technique. These two Blood Races' secret arts were learned from the Blood Tribe when he was in the Alpha Origin realm. The former could restrain one's own holy nature, making it easier to cooperate with other Blood Race members. The latter was used to find other Blood Race members, so it wouldn't be of much use at this time. Although Luan Qiue's cultivation wasn't high, she had refined a drop of sacred blood, so there was still some holy nature in her body. With the Holy Convergence Technique, she could restrain her own holy nature and burst it out at the right time. It would definitely have a miraculous effect. With Luan Xiao and Luan Qiue working together, and with Yaya secretly keeping watch, the problem of the warship wasn't big, unless the Blood Race had other Sunshine Realm cultivators hiding. Luan Qiue naturally understood Lu Ye's intentions and nodded solemnly. "Senior brother, don't worry, I know what to do." Lu Ye's figure flickered, and void spirit runes appeared under his feet. He disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already in a sea of blood. After such a long time, the Blood Race's Sea of Blood had almost completely infiltrated the battlefield. The only place it hadn't penetrated was the battlefield where the Sunshine Realm cultivators were. But the Sunshine Realm cultivators' battlefield had 3 Blood Race cultivators joining in, and there was already a sea of blood there, surging like a tide. Inside the Sea of Blood, Lu Yi immediately activated the Blood Race's secret arts, and his own sea of blood spread out in all directions. He was now at the late-stage constellation realm, and his body was full of vitality. The Sea of Blood covered a large area, and within the range, everything could be reflected in his mind with just a thought. At this moment, a group of cultivators was running around in the Sea of Blood like headless flies. They were tired of dealing with the Blood Race's attacks, and just when they thought that they were doomed, their visions suddenly became clear. Originally, because of the interference of the Sea of Blood, they couldn't detect the Blood Race's movements in time and were restrained in every way. But now, the interference suddenly disappeared, and they could clearly sense all the movements of the enemies nearby. They were instantly confused because there was only one possibility for such a situation, and that was that the Blood Race was secretly helping them. But would such a thing happen? They couldn't understand why, but this kind of help was real. They immediately cheered up and took advantage of the Blood Race's attack to kill them when they were unprepared. Just as they finished off a few Blood Race cultivators, the cultivators felt a kind of guidance coming from the Sea of Blood beside them. At the same time, a person's voice sounded in their ears. "Follow me." They didn't know who it was, but the cultivators still followed the guidance and moved forward. Although they were still in the Sea of Blood, the interference from before was no longer there. As they moved forward, more and more cultivators gathered around them. Among them were many cultivators from the 4 galaxies, and there were also cultivators from the 3 realms. They took some time to talk with each other, and they found that everyone was in the same situation. They were originally trapped in the Sea of Blood and couldn't tell the direction, but the interference of the Sea of Blood suddenly disappeared, and then there was a strange guidance guiding them forward. The cultivators from the 4 galaxies didn't know what was going on, but the cultivators from the 9 provinces knew that this was Lu Ye's doing. Back then, when the cultivators of the 9 provinces went on an expedition to the blood refinement realm, many of the blood race's experts were completely restrained by Lu Yi. Although these blood race cultivators they encountered now were much stronger than those from the blood refinement realm, the restraint didn't seem to have changed. They couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Lu Yi was Lu Yi after all. He could change the world in the 9 provinces, and he was just as dazzling on the star boat. In the sea of blood that Lu Yi displayed, the number of cultivators grew larger and larger. Not only were there cultivators from the 4 galaxies, but there were also Yu Yao. These Yu Yao all came from the 4 galaxies. They were originally struggling to cope with the blood race's Yu Yao, but for some reason, the blood race's Yu Yao suddenly became weak. Their strength fell sharply, and they were easily killed on the spot. Even now, Yu Yao still couldn't figure out why this happened. Half a day later, Lu Yi led a large group of cultivators back to the location of the battleship. There were many blood race cultivators surging in the sea of blood, besieging the battleship. Even though Lan Xiao, a late-stage Yu Yao, was personally overseeing the situation, and Lan Qiue was secretly helping them, the situation was still very dangerous. Lu Yi brought the cultivators back at the right time. His side strength suddenly increased, and in the blink of an eye, they killed the blood race cultivators besieging the battleship. Many cultivators joined up with Lan Xiao and the others, and the battleship's defensive strength increased greatly. Lu Yi didn't stop to rest and charged out. He had just walked around the battlefield. He had found all the cultivators of the 3 realms he could find. Those who couldn't were probably already dead. There were enough cultivators gathered around the battleship. Even the Yu Yao had about 10 of them. They could protect themselves for a short period of time. However, the decision-maker for this battle wasn't the Yu Yao or the Yu constellations. It was Ri Zhao. If Ningbu Ao and the others could win, they would win this battle. If Ningbu Ao and the others lost, they would lose this battle without a doubt. Then all the human cultivators on the battlefield would be slaughtered. That was why Lu Yi wanted to see if he could help Ningbu Ao and the others with his own strength. The suppression of the holy attribute should be useful against the blood race cultivator, Ri Zhao. After all, it was a suppression of the bloodline. It had nothing to do with cultivation. The blood race army's blood sea didn't spread toward Ri Zhao's battlefield. Even if it did, it would be pointless. The intensity of the battle was beyond what they could help with. Lu Yi came to the edge of the blood sea and looked over. His heart sank. Although he couldn't see the exact situation on Ri Zhao's battlefield, he could tell from the energy waves that Ningbu Ao and the others were in dire straits. 3 against 6 meant that each of them had to deal with 2 elites of the same level. Blood race cultivator Ri Zhao had also used the blood sea to create an advantage for himself. Ningbu Ao and the others were powerless. Lu Yi wanted to sneak into Ri Zhao's battlefield and use his holy attribute to surprise the blood race cultivators. But looking at the situation, he knew that wouldn't work. Just the shockwaves from Ri Zhao's battle weren't something he could withstand. How could he get close to the battlefield? Even if he managed to get close, his life would be in danger. If Ri Zhao killed him with a slap, it would be a terrible death. Should he ask Ye to send him over? But Ye's situation was strange. Every time she used Ri Zhao's power, she would become weak. She couldn't use Ri Zhao's power for long. Lu Yi wasn't sure if she could hold on. More importantly, even if he used his holy attribute to suppress the blood race, they only had 3 Ri Zhao. If they couldn't kill blood race cultivator Ri Zhao in a short amount of time, they would still die. Chapter 1598. The only thing they could do now was to escape. They could escape to the indefinite realm and warn Jianghu before the outcome of the battle was decided. As long as Jianghu was fast enough, he could contact Ri Zhao from the other 3 galaxies and form an army of cultivators. They might be able to contend against the vampires and insectoids. Lu Yi dashed toward the battleship again. With the sea of blood surrounding him, the vampires didn't pay him much attention even though his movements were suspicious. Instead, he took advantage of the chaos to kill many vampires and insectoids. On his way back, he brought back many human cultivators. When he returned to the battleship, he told Lan Xiao his plan. Yuan Xiao knew this was the only way and immediately agreed with Lu Yi. The battleship immediately set off to break out of the encirclement. All the cultivators on the battleship were on high alert, their expressions grim. No one knew if they could succeed in breaking out of the encirclement, but they had no choice but to give it a try. The battleship had already attracted the attention of many vampires when it first appeared here. However, with Yuan Xiao, a late-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator, and Lan Qiu's help, the vampires hadn't been able to take down the battleship. Once Lu Yi returned with reinforcements, the vampires wouldn't be able to do anything about it. If the battleship remained here, the vampires wouldn't care too much. If they couldn't take down the battleship, they could go kill the others. It wouldn't be too late to deal with this nail after the battle was over. However, the battleship was about to break out of the encirclement, and the vampires couldn't bear it any longer. A large number of vampires immediately gathered from all directions in the Sea of Blood. There was no lack of vampires from the Moon Jade Realm among them. They shuttled through the Sea of Blood like ghosts and launched attacks from all directions. The battleship's defensive formation had already been activated. This kind of formation was quite powerful, but the Sea of Blood was extremely corrosive and was the bane of defensive formations. Hence, the battleship only took 5 minutes to travel through the Sea of Blood before the defensive formation was completely destroyed. Without the defensive formation, the cultivators could only face the vampires' attacks head-on. In such a battlefield, the power that spell cultivators could unleash was limited. Casting spells in the Blood Sea was bound to encounter heavy resistance, and their power would be greatly reduced. On the other hand, the Blood Race's Blood Dao's secret spells would not be weakened in the Blood Sea. Therefore, when killing enemies in the Blood Sea, close combat was the best choice. But in such an environment, who would dare to leave the warship and rush into the Blood Sea to kill the enemy? What everyone did was to protect as much as possible. On this point, the cultivators of the 9 regions had a big advantage. Most of the battle formations they formed were mainly for defense. Lu Yi stood on the battleship, his brows furrowed. In the current situation, he was also somewhat powerless. Previously, when he was roaming around, he could still activate the Blood Sea technique and disguise himself as a member of the Blood Race to kill wantonly. This was because he basically killed and left at the same time. He would never stay in one place. Even if his actions were suspicious, no Blood Race would pay attention to him. But now, he was on the battleship. If he still did that, he would be exposed very quickly. But it seemed that he had no choice. In his senses, there were already 7 or 8 Yuyao from the insect race who were attacking the battleship. Although there were quite a number of Yuyao on his side, they could only passively defend. Sooner or later, they would slip up. Once they slipped up, the Yuyao's lives might not be in danger, but the constellations would be in trouble. At this thought, Lu Yi hurriedly transmitted a message to the Yuyao on his side, telling them to get ready. Then, he quietly spread out his Blood Sea and merged it with the surrounding Blood Sea. The Blood Race's Sea of Blood could merge with each other. Not only could it expand in size, it could also increase the Blood Race's strength. This was also the reason why the entire battlefield was enveloped by the Blood Race's Sea of Blood. This Sea of Blood was formed by countless Blood Race's secret techniques. As the Blood Sea merged, Lu Yi sensed with his heart and calmly waited. Until a certain moment, he suddenly activated his own holiness and shouted, "Now is the time." Almost at the same time, Yuan Xiao and the others, who had long since made preparations, simultaneously activated their powers and looked in different directions. At first, the Blood Race's Yuyao had been hiding in the Blood Sea like ghosts, making it impossible for them to pinpoint their exact location. Even if they wanted to counterattack, they couldn't. But now, they seemed to be able to see the Yuyao's figures. Not only that, but they also discovered, to their surprise, that the Yuyao's bodies were all stiff and their faces were filled with fear. It was as though they had encountered something extremely terrifying. The next moment, the Yuyao on the battleship began to move, charging in different directions. Powerful vitality began to ebb and flow at this moment. In the blink of an eye, the Yuyao around the battleship had been wiped out one after another. Even those constellations had been slain by Yuyao of the human race. The battleship's surroundings suddenly became clear. When Luan Xiao and the others returned to the starship, they all stared at Lu Yi in shock. No one knew what kind of mysterious method he had used, because when they attacked the opponents they had chosen, those opponents didn't have any strength to resist at all. They were like little chicks that were casually squashed to death. Such a miraculous method was simply unheard of. A Yu Yao from the Daluo star system said excitedly, "Fellow Taoist Lu, if you have such methods." Lu Yi knew what he wanted to say, but before he could finish, he shook his head and said, "I can't intervene in Rizhao's battlefield." The Daluo Yu Yao's face immediately darkened. If he couldn't intervene in Rizhao's battlefield, Lu Yi wouldn't be able to use his methods. They could rely on Lu Ye's help to sweep through this battlefield, but what was the point if they couldn't solve the problem on Rizhao's level? Once the outcome of the battle on Rizhao's level was decided, only destruction awaited them. Hence, they had to flee as soon as possible. Just as he was speaking, Lu Ye's expression suddenly changed, and he turned to look in a certain direction. From that direction, an extremely powerful divine will swept over in an overbearing manner. Rizhao. Luan Xiao's face paled, and the other Yu Yao's expressions turned ugly. Lu Yi knew what he was most worried about had happened. The blood breed had sent more than 3 Rizhao this time. There were 4 of them. 3 of them had attacked Ningbu Ao, Li Guan, Luo Xie, and the others. The last one hadn't shown himself until now. Lu Yi and the others' actions had caused the blood breed to suffer heavy losses. They had killed 7 or 8 Yu Yao, as well as many Xingxiu. This anomaly had immediately attracted the attention of Rizhao, who was hiding in the dark. As the divine will spread, Rizhao's terrifying aura also spread out. From the depths of the blood sea, the aura was rapidly approaching. Luan Xiao and the others looked miserable. They had thought that with the battleship's current power and Lu Ye's miraculous methods, escaping would not be a problem. But now, it seemed that they had been wishful thinking. With Rizhao here, everyone on the battleship would probably die. Lu Yi flashed over to Yaya, who was riding on Hupo's back. He stared at her seriously. "Yaya, someone is coming to kill Daddy." Yaya was playing with Hupo. No matter how dangerous the situation was, she didn't care. But when Lu Yi said this, she suddenly sat up straight. Her eyes widened as she stared in the direction that blood-breed Rizhao was coming from. Her small face was filled with anger. Lu Yi lifted his hand and pulled her down from Hupo's back. He looked in the same direction as her and transmitted his voice to her. "When I tell you to attack, you attack." Yaya nodded seriously. "I will listen to Daddy." Lu Yi sweated. Although he had always treated Yaya as his final trump card, Lu Yi had never thought that he would need to use her in some way. Although Yaya was Rizhao, she still looked like a child. Normally, she acted like a child. Lu Yi felt a little guilty about letting Yaya help him get through this difficult situation. He felt that he was an irresponsible parent, letting his child do the work for him when he couldn't solve the problem. That blood-breed Rizhao came very quickly. He obviously wasn't on guard against this side. After all, with Rizhao's cultivation level, the strongest person he could sense was Luan Xiao. There was no need for him to care. He just wanted to know what had happened in that instant that caused so many of his clan's cultivators to die. In an instant, a figure landed in front of the battleship, blocking their way. Even with the blood sea blocking them, at such a close distance, everyone could clearly see the appearance of this blood breed. He wasn't much different from most other blood breeds. His skin was blood red, his figure was tall, and his ears were sharp. But his expression was full of malice. Lu Yi saw that he was so close and cheered in his heart. He was really afraid that this person wouldn't come close. Although his blood sea covered a large area, there was still a limit. The suppression of his divine nature could only be effective within the area covered by his blood sea. It couldn't be suppressed outside of the area. If this Rizhao had used the blood breed's secret technique from a distance, he would be helpless. But the other party was confident in his strength and came close, so he didn't have to be polite. "Yaya." Lu Yi sent a telepathic message and pushed Yaya from behind. "Beat him up." When the blood breed Rizhao arrived, he was still observing Lu Yi and the others. He saw that Lu Yi had actually pushed a child out. While he was puzzled, Yaya had already rushed in front of him like an arrow released from a bow. A small fist was aimed at his head. The Blood Clan member, Rizhao, frowned. He did not understand what was going on, but in the next moment, his expression changed. This was because Yaya, who was originally as ordinary as a child, suddenly exuded Rizhao's ferocious aura when she punched. He instinctively raised his hand to block, but at that moment, a terrifying suppression descended from the sky. In an instant, the blood-breed Rizhao felt that the circulation of his spiritual power had stagnated a lot, and the blood in his body was greatly affected. Rizhao's aura suddenly dropped a lot. With a scream, he hurriedly retreated. Blood splattered, mixed with broken limbs and minced flesh. Yaya's punch had actually shattered both of his hands. Chapter 1599. However, the Blood Clan's Rizhao also used this force to retreat, and in the blink of an eye, he escaped. Yaya was unforgiving. She chased after him like a tiger let out of its cage. Lu Yi also chased after her. He wanted to suppress the Blood Clan's Rizhao with his own holiness, so he could not be too far away from him. But Rizhao was still Rizhao. His speed was ridiculously fast. Lu Yi had just chased after him, but Rizhao had already escaped the range of his blood sea. Lu Yi couldn't do anything about it. Yaya, on the other hand, was able to catch up. She was in the depths of the blood sea, waving her two small fists at Rizhao. Rizhao was exhausted from the bombardment and complained incessantly. Seeing that Yaya and Rizhao were getting farther and farther away from him, Lu Yi could only helplessly shout, "Yeah, come back." The main reason was that he didn't know how long Yaya could maintain this state. If the time was short, and Yaya lost Rizhao's power, she would have no room to resist against the strong Blood Clan. Yaya was very obedient. When she heard Lu Ye's voice, she immediately turned around and flew back to him. Lu Yi hugged her and looked at the vampire Rizhao's position with some reluctance. He quickly turned around and flew back to the warship. When they returned to the warship, Yaya was already curled up in Lu Ye's arms, whispering, "Daddy, sleepy. Don't sleep, hang in there." Lu Yi patted her little head. It was certain that even though Rizhao had suffered a small loss at Yaya's hands, it was impossible for him to retreat. At this moment, he must be observing their movements. If Yaya was awake, it could be used as a deterrent, so the other party wouldn't dare to act rashly. But if Yaya was asleep, there was no telling what the other party would do. If he attacked again, without Yaya's protection, the people on the warship wouldn't be able to fight back. But Yaya looked too sleepy. Even if she tried to keep herself awake, her eyelids couldn't help but close together, and her little head was nodding. Just as Lu Yi expected, at this moment, the retreating Blood Clan's Rizhao was looking at them in bewilderment. Compared to the terrifying strength that Yaya had just displayed, what shocked him even more was the instantaneous outburst of her holiness. He was also an existence that had refined sacred blood. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to advance to sunshine. However, he didn't refine much sacred blood, only one drop. This was because sacred blood was an extremely precious and rare treasure even within the Blood Clan. Furthermore, no matter how strong one's cultivation was, the process of refining sacred blood was filled with unpredictable dangers. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the Blood Clan would only refine one drop of sacred blood. Very few would dare to refine a second drop. Possessing the holy blood and being a holy seed, the blood kindred Sunshine was no stranger to the holy nature. He had also felt the holy nature of other holy seeds before, but he had never felt as strong and terrifying as he did just now. There was a saint seed on the battleship, and it was definitely a saint seed that had refined more than one drop of saint blood. But since it was a holy seed, why did it want to deal with him? The blood kindred Sunshine couldn't figure out the crux of the matter. He was shocked by the power that Yaya had just displayed, but he was also afraid of the holy nature's suppression. He didn't dare move forward. He just followed the battleship from a distance. At the same time, he used his will to send a message to the other 3 blood kindred Sunshine, who were in the center of the battlefield. He was alone, so he didn't dare come forward to investigate the situation. But if the other 3 blood kindred Sunshine came with him, then there wouldn't be a problem. Then, with the combined power of the 4 kindred suns, they would be able to uncover the secrets of the battleship. Sacred blood was too tempting for the blood kindred. Compared to the 4 galaxies, the blood kindred cared more about the sacred blood. So, if the news spread, the 3 blood kindred Sunshine, who were fighting Ningbu Ao and the others, would definitely come. As for Sunshine's battle, Ningbu Ao and the others were all injured. Even if they retreated from the battlefield, Bai Jin and the other 2 insect kindred Sunshine would continue to suppress them. Ningbu Ao and the others couldn't make a comeback. On the battleship, Lu Yi could feel blood kindred Sunshine's presence from afar. He was following them in the depths of the blood sea. They couldn't count on Yaya anymore. Although she was trying her best not to fall asleep, every time she unleashed Nicho's power, she would need to sleep for a while before she could recover. Therefore, if Nicho of the Blood Clan were to rush over at this time, they really didn't have a good way to deal with him. The only reason he hadn't come was because he was afraid. But he wouldn't let the battleship leave the Blood Sea. Once the battleship left the Blood Sea, he would attack again. Then they would be exposed. Many thoughts flashed through Lu Ye's mind. He tried to think of a way out of this situation. No matter what, he had to at least take the people on the battleship and escape. But the difference in power between them made it impossible for him to carry out any of his plans. Luan Xiao seemed to see Lu Ye's dilemma. She said, "Brother Lu, I will attack later. I will try to delay Sunshine. No matter what, you have to take them and escape." Her expression was resolute. She knew what would happen if she fought Sunshine with her late-stage Yuyao strength, but she had made the decision to participate in this battle. She had to take responsibility for her decision. If her death could save the lives of the cultivators of the 3 realms, then her death would be worth it. Her sacrifice moved the other Yuyao. Immediately, a grand immortal Yuyao spoke up, "Brother Luan, I will help you." With one person speaking up, a second person spoke up. Soon, all the Yuyao on the battleship expressed their willingness to fight alongside Luan Xiao. One of the indestructible Yuyao looked at Lu Yi with a grave expression. "Brother Lu, you have to inform Brother Jiang Shang about this no matter what. The survival of the indestructible star system and the 4 directions star system depends on you alone." The indestructible star system definitely didn't know about the battle here. If the blood kindred won the battle here, they would definitely set off for the indestructible star system. How could the defenseless indestructible be a match for them then? But if Lu Yi could inform Jiang Shang in advance, they might have a chance at survival. The Yuyao were clearly prepared to die. With so many Yuyao working together, they might have a chance at stopping Sunshine. Unfortunately, the twin breath formation disc wasn't suitable for the Yuyao to use right now. Otherwise, Lu Yi would definitely leave a few formation discs for them. Lu Yi sighed inwardly. Just as he was about to agree, he suddenly sensed something. He turned toward the center of the battlefield, and his expression became calm. "Everyone, prepare to fight to the death." This couldn't be helped. 3 powerful auras were rushing toward them from the center of the battlefield. It was none other than the 3 blood kindred Sunshine who had joined the battle earlier. Lu Yi knew that this was probably the result of him activating his divine attribute. The 4th blood kindred Sunshine was suppressed by the divine attribute and injured by Yaya. Now, he was tailing behind the battleship, not daring to approach. He had actually called for reinforcements from his own race. How cautious of him. Lu Ye's side was already powerless against Sunshine alone. Now that there were 3 more, how were they supposed to stop him? They could only fight to the death. Luan Xiao and the others obviously sensed this as well. Their expressions were miserable. The 4th blood kindred Sunshine was still tailing behind the battleship. In the direction of the center of the battlefield, 3 more Rikus were attacking. In such a hopeless situation, many human cultivators on the battleship looked terrified. Only the cultivators of the 9 states were in high spirits. Knowing full well that they were bound to die, they were powerless to resist, but even if they died, they still had to die with dignity, with a bit of backbone. Cultivators dying in battle was the most normal ending. Every cultivator from the 9 regions had long been mentally prepared for such an outcome. Lu Yi put the sleeping Yaya aside and stood still. A figure flashed beside him. Lu Yi turned around and saw Yi smiling at him without any fear. Instead, she said, Don't even think about leaving me behind now. Lu Yi raised his hand and rubbed her head. He didn't say anything for a moment. He secretly activated the spiritual power in his body and began to activate the power of the red talisman. If there was anything in his hand that could threaten sunshine, it would be the red talisman given by Su Yuqing. However, Lu Yi wasn't sure how much of an impact the red talisman would have on sunshine if its full power erupted. Maybe it could hurt sunshine, maybe it couldn't. However, if he used the suppression of the divine nature and activated the power of the red talisman, the chances would be greater. However, he had to grasp this opportunity well. He had always regarded the red talisman as his last trump card. Usually he was reluctant to use it. At most, he would use it as a deterrent, but this time, he had no choice but to use it. Fellow Taoist Li Shang, I've implicated you this time. Lu Ye's spiritual sense surged again. Since the beginning of the battle here, Li Shang had been hiding in his spirit sea, ready to use the soul possession technique at any time, but so far, Lu Yi didn't need her help. Li Shang's voice sounded, "Fellow Taoist, you don't have to worry about it. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have known whose hands I would have fallen into, and I don't know what kind of miserable fate I would have had. At least I feel at ease following you." Lu Yi nodded. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly frowned and looked in a certain direction. For some reason, there was a burst of exclamations, and under his gaze, in the depths of the thick blood sea, there were flashes of fluorescent light, some of which were rippling with colorful colors. Moreover, the blood sea in that direction seemed to be showing signs of melting. Lu Yi thought he was hallucinating, but when he looked carefully, he found that the colorful light was even more intense, and this light was vaguely familiar. The exclamations became more and more intense, as if something incredible had happened in the depths of the blood sea. Soon, Lu Yi realized that he wasn't hallucinating. The blood sea was really melting, because the originally extremely thick blood sea was rapidly thinning and then disappearing. It was also at this moment that the three blood races Sunshine, who had rushed from the central battlefield, met up with the fourth. Before they could understand the specific situation, a colorful light suddenly fell from the sky. Under the light, the surrounding blood sea quickly disappeared, as if it had completely evaporated. Chapter 1600. The colorful light spread out like a cloud of stardust, covering a large area. Wherever the light touched, the sea of blood melted away, revealing the hidden battlefield. The four Blood Clan members, who had just gathered together, saw the stardust approaching them before they could react. They hurriedly activated their blood-red light to protect themselves. But the strange thing was that the colorful stardust ignored the blood-red light and directly invaded their bodies. The next moment, the four Rikahiras were shocked to find that they could no longer control their bodies. "What's going on?" One of the Blood Clan members was shocked. Another member of the Blood Clan looked up and saw the figure of a huge, colorful butterfly star beast. At this moment, this huge butterfly star beast was gently flapping its wings and silently flying towards the depths of the battlefield. "Dancer!" The Blood Clan member, Rikahiras, recognized the butterfly star beast at a glance and was shocked. The other Rikahiras also saw the butterfly star beast, and they were all grief-stricken. As Sunshine Clan members, there were very few star beasts that could pose a threat to them. Even if they were all Sunshine Clan members, ordinary star beasts were no match for cultivators of other clans in terms of fighting skills. But some star beasts were different. Those star beasts had lived in the universe for countless years, and each of them had mysterious magical powers. Under normal circumstances, even Sunshine Clan members would retreat if they encountered such star beasts. Fortunately, most of the time, these star beasts would not kill easily, so as long as they avoided them, there would be no problem. These star beasts, which had lived for countless years and could pose a threat to Sunshine Clan members, were basically ancient species. Dancer was one of them. The Sunlight of the Blood Clan knew of the existence of the Dancer because not long ago, they discovered the whereabouts of the Dancer. She had fought with some powerful existence and was injured. Then, she came to this part of the starry sky and hibernated on a desolate star to heal her injuries. Under normal circumstances, this kind of healing process would take at least a few hundred years to complete. Therefore, although the Blood Clan members had discovered Dancer's whereabouts, they did not pay much attention to it. After all, as long as they did not provoke it, it would not do anything to the Blood Clan members. But now, she had left the desolate planet where she hibernated and barged into this battlefield. Why is Dancer here? One of the vampires, Rizhao, asked in surprise. As he asked, he spread out his arms and swayed up and down along with the Dancer's wings. Not only were his arms swaying, even his steps began to move. It looked like he was dancing. As expected of Rizhao, his dancing was really good. It doesn't make sense. The other Rizhao also began to dance. He was confused. He couldn't understand why Dancer, who was supposed to be healing, would suddenly barge into this battlefield. Not a big problem. The third vampire, Sunshine, said. Although the Dancer's talent was mysterious and unpredictable, and even Sunshine couldn't resist it, causing a slight change in the battle situation, their cultivation was still profound. As long as they could hold on for a while, they would naturally be able to get rid of the Dancer's influence. Even Rizhao of the Blood Tribe was dancing, let alone the other cultivators. At this moment, wherever Dancer went, all the Blood Tribe, Insect Tribe, and even human cultivators were affected by her. The reason the Blood Sea melted was not because it evaporated or anything, but because the Blood Tribe was affected by Dancer. They couldn't exert their strength, so the Blood Sea naturally couldn't be maintained. On the warship, a group of people beside Lu Yi were singing and dancing. Even Hoopa wasn't spared. At this moment, his tiger eyes were wide open, and he was twisting around on the deck, looking very confused. He danced beautifully. Her posture was as graceful as a fairy's as she danced in circles around Lu Yi. As she spun, she was at a loss as to what to do. Lu Yi, I can't control myself. Lu Yi admired her performance and nodded. It's fine. Turning his head, he saw that everyone on the battleship was dancing. Shui Yuan was even dancing with Hua Ci. The two of them were facing each other, and their eyes reflected the other's panicked expression. However, their bodies were out of control. Wangu Lu, Tao Yen, and Zhou Xingji, who had experienced the power of the butterfly star beast, looked at each other in the lively crowd and saw the complicated look in each other's eyes. Last time, the three of them danced for a whole day under the influence of the butterfly star beast. They regarded it as an unerasable stain in their lives, and they didn't dare to think about it, let alone mention it. Fortunately, after such a long time, they gradually forgot about that embarrassing experience. Who would have thought that it would happen again? And this time, it wasn't just the three of them. More than half of the creatures on the battlefield were affected. As the butterfly star beast went deeper and deeper, more and more creatures were affected. Not far from Lu Yi, Luan Xiao's face was bright red. She was in the late moon jade realm, a pillar of the jade conch realm. But now, she was dancing in front of so many jade conch realm cultivators. It was completely inappropriate for her to do such a thing. But looking around, she wasn't the only one dancing. The entire warship was dancing. Outside the warship, the Blood Tribe and the Insect Tribe on the battlefield were also dancing. Even Rizhao of the Blood Tribe wasn't spared. Fellow Taoist Lu, what's going on? Wan Xiao looked at Lu Yi and asked. Her tone was a little strange, as if she was singing. What she wanted to ask was why Lu Yi wasn't affected. Almost everyone was dancing, but Lu Yi was standing there quietly. He seemed like a crane in a flock of chickens. It's a good thing, Lu Yi replied. He thought that facing the four Rizhao of the insect tribe would be a dead end. Who would have thought that the butterfly star beast would suddenly enter the battlefield? Such a variable was naturally a good thing. How is it a good thing? Wan Xiao said bitterly. She danced and did a split in front of Lu Yi. As expected of a late-stage moon jade realm weapon cultivator, her body was unbelievably soft. Her split was perfectly straight, and her beautiful legs were long and slender. Lu Yi was stunned. Wan Xiao's face was as red as blood. She glared at him fiercely, as if warning him to stop looking. Lu Yi quickly withdrew his gaze and licked his lips. He glanced in the direction of the four Blood Tribe cultivators and suppressed the urge to take their lives. Instead, he turned to look in the direction the butterfly star beast flew. Is the bone sun working? In the spirit ocean, Li Shang also noticed the change outside and asked. The bone sun was a treasure obtained from the fortune roulette. Lu Yi didn't know what it was used for. However, on the way back to the 9 prefectures, Lu Yi and Li Shang figured out the use of the bone sun. Its sound could attract the star beasts in the starry sky. As for the specific reason, Lu Yi didn't know. It was because every time he blew the bone sun, a star beast would attack. He had seen the strangeness of the butterfly star beast with his own eyes. He also noticed the strength of the butterfly star beast. After all, it was a powerful existence that could compete with the blue bird. Although it was no match for the blue bird, the fact that the butterfly star beast could compete with the blue bird meant that its strength was extraordinary. Lu Yi also knew that the blue bird escaped into this starry sky after it was injured. Therefore, when Lu Yi sensed that the situation was not good, he took out the bone sun and blew it. He wanted to see if he could attract the butterfly star beast. However, nothing happened for a long time. Lu Yi thought that the butterfly star beast had gone far away, or that the sound of the bone sun had no effect on the butterfly star beast. However, he didn't expect that the butterfly star beast would suddenly appear at this time and turn the already chaotic battlefield into a complete mess. However, Lu Yi wasn't sure whether the butterfly star beast had come here by chance or was attracted by the sound of his bone sun. The 4 great vampires were singing and dancing over there. For the time being, there was no threat. Therefore, he could ignore them. Now, he had to quickly verify the reason why the butterfly star beast had come here. If it was really attracted by the sound of the bone sun, then this matter was very promising. Under Lu Ye's close attention, the sea of blood melted wherever the butterfly star beast went. After a short while, the butterfly star beast stopped in a certain area. It gently flapped its wings and stopped moving forward. Lu Yi was overjoyed. He was sure that the butterfly star beast had been attracted by the sound of the bone sun because the place where it stopped was exactly where he had put away the bone sun. Obviously, the butterfly star beast had sensed the aura of the bone sun or was sure that the sound of the bone sun had appeared here last. Therefore it stopped here. After realizing this, Lu Yi flew into the sky and headed in a certain direction. The decisive factor in this battle was Rizhao. The 4 great vampires, Rizhao, were not a threat for now. So, as long as he could get rid of Bai Jin and the 2 insectoids, he would win this battle. However, if he wanted to deal with Rizhao alone, it would be impossible. He could only rely on the butterfly star beast's power. He was very fast. In order to reach the designated location as soon as possible, he didn't care about his own body's exhaustion. In just half a cup of tea's time, Lu Yi arrived at a certain part of the battlefield. From where he was, it was the battlefield where Ningbu Ao and the others were fighting against Bai Jin and the others. There was also a sea of blood on the battlefield. It must have been caused by Bai Jin. The auras of the 6 vampires were clear, but the auras of Ningbu Ao and the others were clearly showing signs of exhaustion. After all, fighting in the sea of blood meant that they had no advantage in terms of terrain. Plus, Ningbu Ao and the others had to deal with the 6 vampires. How could they be a match for them? If the 3 vampires hadn't been attracted by the sacred blood and left, Ningbu Ao and the others would have been in a worse situation. Looking past this sunny battlefield, further ahead was the position of the butterfly star beasts. It could be said that the butterfly star beasts were on the same line on the battlefield of Lu Yi and the 6 great suns. After confirming that the location was correct, Lu Yi immediately took out the bone sun and placed it next to his mouth. He stirred up his aura and gently blew into it. At the same time, he looked at the butterfly star beast. Along with the deep sound of the bone sun, the body of the butterfly star beast stationed in the starry sky suddenly moved. Chapter 1602. Bai Jin was not exaggerating. It was the truth. The physique of a sunshine cultivator was extremely strong, and he was full of vitality. Even if he did not use any energy, he would be able to recover in the blink of an eye with just his physique alone. That was why he said that even if he stood here and let Lu Yi attack him, Lu Yi would not be able to kill him, because the injuries caused by Lu Yi would heal very quickly. A constellation cultivator would never be able to expand an injury to the extent that it could threaten Rizhao's life unless he exhausted his vitality. But Dancer's influence was limited. How could such a small injury exhaust Bai Jin's vitality? After saying that, Bai Jin suddenly felt that something was wrong. The injury that should have healed quickly seemed to be blocked by some kind of power, and it did not heal immediately. He could not help but be surprised. The only thing that could affect the recovery of Rizhao's physical body was always Rizhao's power. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Lu Yi, a constellation cultivator, to do so. In fact, it was not Lu Ye's power that affected Bai Jin's recovery, but Hui's power. As a member of the soldier race, the Ho itself had many strange abilities. The Cyan Hall inside allowed Lu Yi to obtain the legacies left behind by his ancestors, tempering his blade techniques. The Ho itself was not only extremely sharp, but also had a tearing ability. A strange power lingered around the wound caused by Hui, and under the influence of that power, it was very difficult for the wound to heal. Lu Yi could even use Hui to control this power, causing the wound to tear apart. It could be said that if Bai Jin and Lu Yi were both constellations, even if Hui only made a small wound, Lu Yi could expand it and continue to tear the enemy's body apart. It was less effective against Yu Yao, and even less effective against Rizhao. Otherwise, Lu Yi only needed to use Hui to rapidly expand the wound and kill Bai Jin on the spot. How much power the Ho could unleash would depend entirely on Lu Ye's cultivation level. After the soldier tribe recognized its master, its power would gradually increase along with the strength of the weapon cultivator it recognized. In other words, it would be unsealed. Because every soldier tribe had existed for countless years, they themselves were top-notch treasures. Even if it couldn't kill Bai Jin on the spot, Pyrolite's power was still working, which prevented Bai Jin's wounds from healing quickly. Although Bai Jin was a little surprised, he did not panic. If Lu Yi could only use this much strength, it would be very difficult to kill him in a short period of time. Of course, it would be hard to say if it took a long time. Under the premise that his injuries could not recover quickly, as long as there was enough time, Lu Yi might really be able to cut off his head. Ningbu Ao and the others watched with wide eyes. They were in a rush. When they saw that Lu Yi wasn't affected by the dancer, they thought they could turn the tables. But in their excitement, they forgot about the huge difference between Lu Yi and Bai Jin's cultivation. Realizing that Lu Yi wouldn't be able to kill Bai Jin in a short amount of time, Luoxia shouted, "Young friend, hurry and send a message to Apeiron." This was a good opportunity. Lu Yi could move freely and there was no one to stop him. As long as he left the battlefield for Apeiron would be able to get information on this side and make preparations. Lu Yi ignored him and stared deeply at Bai Jin in front of him. Bai Jin's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling about this. The next moment, he saw Lu Ye's body shine with a bloody light. It became a ball of blood that wrapped around his body. A secret skill of the blood path? Bai Jin was shocked. He didn't know why Lu Yi was using a secret skill of the blood path. Using a secret skill of the blood path in front of a blood was like showing off in front of an expert. But then, a powerful and strong divine nature enveloped him. Bai Jin, who was dancing in the blood ball, had a great change in expression as he cried out in shock. After he screamed, his power dropped. Although it didn't fall below Riri's, it was barely enough to keep him at Riri's level. Inside the ball of blood, Lu Yi held the Panshan knife in a reverse grip. His other hand gripped the scabbard tightly. Then he assumed a strange posture. In the next moment his body spun, and the Pan Mountain saber slashed fiercely and swiftly at Bai Jin's neck. The ferocious slash deepened Bai Jin's wound. Bai Jin frowned in pain, but compared to his injury he was more shocked by the holy aura Lu Yi was displaying. Another slash came down, and it seemed to be faster and stronger than before. The third slash, the fourth slash. Lu Ye's body spun faster and faster until his entire body became a blur. A storm of blades swirled around him. Windmill. Although he had only experienced Qing Fu's dual blade secret technique once, he had been fighting against Qing Fu for a long time, so he had more or less grasped the essence of the dual blade secret technique. Although he couldn't perform it as freely as Qing Fu, he could still perform it. The only difference was that he didn't have dual blades, only a scabbard. Thus, the power of the technique wasn't satisfactory and could only be displayed by half. Normally, Lu Yi wouldn't have used a secret skill like that in a fight. It would have been exposing his weakness to the enemy. But now was the perfect time to use it. Bai Jin couldn't fight back, and he had Riri's body. Where could he find such a good target? Blood splattered everywhere, accompanied by Bai Jin's scream. The two bugs, Riri and Ningbu Ao, had no idea what was happening inside the ball of blood, but from Bai Jin's scream, they knew he was in a bad situation. Star Constellation couldn't really kill Riri, could she? This strange thought appeared in everyone's mind. Inside the ball of blood, Lu Ye's presence was getting stronger. Bai Jin's presence was getting weaker and weaker. Normally, a slash like that would have sent Bai Jin flying, but he was trapped inside the ball of blood, so he could only stay where he was. In 3 breaths, Lu Yi had lost track of how many slashes he had made. When the last slash came out, the resistance against the blades suddenly lightened. At the same time, Lu Yi could clearly feel his flesh and blood being torn apart. There were many inheritances inside Riri. No matter which one it was a huge burden on the body. That was especially true of Qin Ri's double blade secret skill. This was the first time Lu Yi had used it, and his target was Riri. He didn't dare hold back. He used too much strength, and his flesh and blood were damaged. Under the watchful eyes of the other Riri elites, the ball of blood surrounding Lu Yi and Bai Jin suddenly shrank, revealing 2 figures inside. Lu Yi was still holding his blade in one hand and his scabbard in the other. He stood there quietly, but his blood was boiling. His spiritual power was boiling. His skin and face were red. It was obvious he had used up a lot of energy. Not far in front of him, Bai Jin's body was stiff. He looked at Lu Yi in shock, his eyes wide open. However, at this moment he actually did not move his body. When the 2 bugs saw this, they felt a lot of emotions. Suddenly, there was a burst of blood. Bai Jin's neck was bleeding, and his head flew high into the air. Ri was killed. The 2 bugs were shocked. When they looked at Lu Yi again, their faces changed. Ningbu Ao and the others were overjoyed. They had thought this was impossible, but Lu Yi had actually done it. It was unthinkable for a Xing Su to kill Riri, even if Riri couldn't fight back. But now, it had happened right in front of their eyes. Wuxia shouted, "Little friend, continue to kill. Kill them all." Ha! This was really a turn of events. They thought they were going to die. Who would have thought that Dancer would barge into the battlefield and disrupt the battle? Now, Lu Yi from the 9th sky had come out of nowhere to save them. It didn't take long for Lu Yi to kill Bai Jin, so all he had to do was to kill the 2 insectoids and the 4 blood breeds. Once Dancer's influence was gone, the 3 of them would be able to kill as they pleased. By then, no matter how many insectoids and blood breeds there wouldn't be enough to kill. Lu Yi didn't move, nor did he respond. He maintained his posture. It wasn't that he didn't want to move, he couldn't. He had underestimated the aftereffects of using the great windmill. Although he looked fine on the surface, most of his flesh and blood had ruptured. Not to mention using the great windmill again, he could not even use half of his usual strength. Plus, he had been able to kill Bai Jin mostly because of the suppression of his holy nature. Against the bugs, the holy nature had no effect. Plus, the bugs' shells were much stronger than the blood tribes. Wuxia urged again. Seeing that Lu Yi still didn't move, he immediately realized that something was wrong with Lu Ye's situation, and his heart sank. Currently, on the battlefield, there were only 3 Rikashi on their side. Even if Bai Jin died, the enemy still had 6. If they couldn't close this gap in a short period of time, once everyone got rid of Dancer's influence, they would still be waiting for death. Wuxia couldn't help but sigh. Today's battle had truly been a tumultuous one. At first, they had thought that victory was within their grasp, but because of Bai Jin, all of their efforts had been ruined. Instead, they had been surrounded by the blood breeds and had fallen into a dangerous situation. Dancer had appeared out of nowhere, disrupting the battle, and Lu Yi had forcefully killed Bai Jin, bringing them hope. Now that hope had been shattered, Wuxia and the others had experienced the ups and downs of life a few times that day. Even someone as strong as Ri couldn't handle it. After a few dozen breaths, Lu Yi let out a breath. He slowly moved his body and sheathed his pan-shan knife. He looked at Ningbu Ao and the others and asked, "Which of you has the strongest killing power?" He had a guess, but he still had to ask. Ningbu Ao and the others didn't know. Chapter 1603. Their eyes met, and Lu Yi said, "This is the first time I've used this ability. It may be a little painful, but please bear with it." It was impossible for him to kill all the Nikitas by himself. Bai Jin had no power to fight back, and he had to rely on the suppression of the blood breed's divinity. He also had to use a double-blade secret technique like the Great Windmill to cut off his head. There were 2 Nikitas here, and there were 4 blood breeds over there. He didn't know how long it would take for him to kill them. Lu Yi didn't know how long Dancer's magical power could affect Nikitas, but Wangu Lu and the others were only affected for a day. They were constellations, and they could get rid of Dancer's influence in a day, let alone Nikitas. The effect of Dancer's magical power on Nikitas was estimated to last no more than an hour, and now half an hour had passed, and Nikitas could get rid of it at any time. Therefore, Lu Yi felt that it was better to leave the task of killing Nikitas to the other Nikitas. Li Guan's killing power was the strongest, and she was undoubtedly the most suitable candidate. The talent tree could burn the power that invaded Dancer's body, and after the talent tree's 3rd transformation, the power of burning could be applied to others. Lu Yi had been aware of this for a long time. The first time he helped Ye burn the soul-devouring aphids in the divine sense was Lu Ye's first attempt. However, that was after all in the divine sense, but this time the target was Li Guan's body. It was indeed the first time, and Lu Yi wasn't sure how effective it would be. The only thing he was sure of was that Li Guan wouldn't feel too good. After all, the burning power of the talent tree would definitely cause a certain degree of damage to her body while burning Dancer's power. Li Guan didn't understand, but as Lu Yi used it, she could clearly feel a scorching power spreading from Lu Ye's palm and invading her body. Normally, it was impossible for the spiritual power of a constellation to invade Nichita's body, but Li Guan couldn't control herself at the moment, let alone mobilize her spiritual power, so this kind of invasion became possible. Feeling the purity and majesty of the spiritual power, Li Guan couldn't help but be moved. If she hadn't experienced it herself, it would be hard to believe that a constellation could temper their spiritual power to such an extent. Back when she was at the constellation realm, her refinement of spiritual power was far inferior to Lu Ye's. Su Dingyang, the strongest constellation of this generation in her domain, had once been defeated by Lu Ye. She had heard Kong Qing mention this before, and she knew that Lu Ye was much stronger than Su Dingyang. However, knowing was one thing, and she had not seen it with her own eyes. Until now. Possessing such pure and majestic spiritual energy, it was no wonder that Su Dingyang would be defeated. Not to mention Su Dingyang, even when she was at the later stage of the constellation realm, she would definitely not be a match for Lu Ye of the 9 heavens. Distracting thoughts flashed through his mind, and Li Guan's expression began to become bewildered. Because as Lu Ye's spiritual power invaded her body, she actually felt something burning in her body. Gradually, the uncontrollable abnormality of her body eased a little. Although she still couldn't control her body, compared to before, there were indeed changes. Her eyes suddenly flashed with shock as she finally realized what Lu Yi was doing. He was actually helping her get rid of the dancer's power. It wasn't accurate to describe it as expelling. A more direct feeling was burning. Lu Ye's power that invaded her body was like a fire, while the dancer's power was like a block of ice. Wherever the flames passed, the ice began to melt. She had been a little puzzled before. There were so many creatures on the battlefield, whether they were humans, insects, or vampires, whether it was Rizhao, Yu Yao, or Constellation, everyone was affected by the dancer's power. Why was it that Lu Yi was not affected? She had thought that he was just lucky that he wasn't affected by the dancer's power, but now it seemed that it wasn't luck at all. Instead, he had the power to restrain the dancer's power. But how is this possible? Even Ri Zhao on the battlefield couldn't resist the dancer's strange power, so how could a mere constellation restrain it? But now it seemed that not only could he restrain it himself, he could even help others resolve it. She could clearly feel that Lu Yi was controlling his own power, not daring to use it too intensely. This was because when the fire burned away the dancer's strange power, it also caused some damage to her flesh, causing Li Guan to feel pain. She immediately said, "Don't hold back. Just do your best." She was under the sun, so how could she not endure such pain? When Lu Yi heard this, he knew that this was indeed not the time to be concerned. Even if Li Guan was really injured, he had to let her recover her ability to move as soon as possible. Without any hesitation, he activated the power of the talent tree with all his might. The fire that had invaded Li Guan's body immediately burned fiercely. Even as strong as Li Guan was, she couldn't help but groan. Her face flushed unnaturally red. Ningbu Ao and Luo Xie watched from a distance. At first, they didn't know what Lu Yi was doing, but as they watched, their eyes lit up with joy. This was because Li Guan, who had been singing and dancing with them, had begun to slow down. In less than half a cup of tea's time, Li Guan had completely stopped. She had broken free of the dancer's influence. The two insects' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They wanted to run away, but they couldn't control their bodies. As soon as she regained control of her body, Li Guan nodded at Lu Yi and said gratefully, "Thank you for your help, little friend." As soon as she finished speaking, the clear sound of a sword rang out. Li Guan's entire body seemed to have turned into a sharp sword. Then she became one with the sword. A sword light that seemed to be able to tear apart the starry sky flew toward one of the insects, Ri Zhao. That cold sword light swept past the insectoid Ri and dispersed not far away, revealing Li Guan's figure. He held a long sword in his hand, slanted downwards, but at the tip of the sword there was a drop of blood that did not disperse. The insect's body suddenly stiffened. Under the horrified gaze of his companions, a drop of blood appeared between his eyebrows. Then his life force dissipated. Li Guan didn't attack again. Instead, he calmed himself down. Lu Ye's unbridled attack just now had messed up the mana in her body. Her physical body was damaged quite a bit. In order to kill the insect, she had used all of her strength. Coupled with the fact that she was already injured, she was a little tired after that attack. She needed to rest for a while before she could attack again. Ningbu Ao and Luo Xie were stunned. When Li Guan had broken free from the dancer's control, they had expected this to happen. But when it actually happened, they were both shocked and excited. Luo Xie shouted, "Little friend, come and help me." Where else could he find such an opportunity to kill an elite of the same level? He had to ask Lu Yi to help him. If it was too late, Ri Zhao would be killed by Li Guan. Luo Xie regretted it. If he had known this would happen, he would have volunteered to help Lu Yi. Luo Xie had just finished speaking when Ningbu Ao's voice rang out. "Little friend, don't mind him. He is just a weak spell cultivator. What can he do? Come and help me. We are both weapon cultivators. We should help each other." Luo Xie was so angry that his nose was crooked. He was already so old. He wasn't delicate at all. Plus, Ningbu Ao wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. He had never seen him act so shamelessly before. Lu Yi flew toward Ningbu Ao. It wasn't because they were both weapon cultivators, but because Ningbu Ao was closer to him. Lu Yi used his power to help Ningbu Ao, but he didn't forget to shout at Luo Xie, "Elder Luo, please wait. I'm on my way." Luo Xie sighed helplessly. He knew he wouldn't be able to kill Ri Zhao. Li Guan could move freely now. Ningbu Ao would get rid of the dancer's control. There were only a few Ri Zhao left on the battlefield. They wouldn't be able to kill him. Although they were far away from the other four-blood Ri Zhao's eyesight was very strong. He could see everything that was happening. When they saw Lu Yi killed by Jin, they were terrified. They were afraid they would be next. But when they saw Lu Ye's condition change, the blood Ri Zhao understood that Lu Yi wouldn't be able to do anything else. Not long after they made up their minds, Li Guan could move freely again. In an instant, he had killed Ri Zhao. Seeing that Ningbu Ao was about to break free from the dancer's influence, the few Sunshine Blood kindred started to panic. They were all sitting ducks now. They couldn't fight back against any attack. They couldn't even dodge. If they were attacked by a Sunshine Blood kindred, they would surely die. They were all angry. For the sake of Indefinite and the other planets, the Blood Rizhao and the bugs had planned for 400 years. The most important thing was for Baijin to enter Quiet Moon and gain their trust. That way, he could become a Rizhao. When Baijin went to Quiet Moon, there was only Yu Yao. To raise Yu Yao into a Rizhao, even if Baijin had the potential, it would take a lot of resources. Finally, Baijin became a Rizhao. His position in Quiet Moon was stable. The plan of the two races was finally on the right track. Everything was progressing smoothly. The insectoid nest seemed to have landed there by accident, but in reality, it had been planned for a long time. Otherwise, even if there were two Rikagas guarding an insectoid nest, they would not have dared to stay so brazenly outside a star system like a Pyrrhon. Things developed just as the experts of the two races had planned. The four galaxies sent out many experts to encircle and annihilate them. As long as these experts were eaten, the four galaxies' foundations would be greatly damaged. Then, the two races would be able to take down Indestructible and use it as a base to gradually nibble away at the other three galaxies. Great things were just around the corner. If nothing unexpected happened, the four-star system would belong to the Blood Rizhao and the bugs. However, an accident had happened. Moreover, it was an unimaginable accident. Chapter 1604. Dancer had inexplicably barged into the battlefield, and all the living beings on the battlefield had been corroded by her power. Only one human was unaffected. It would have been fine if that was all, but a single human from the constellation was unable to change the direction of this battle. But he had the power to help others escape. Li Guan had been freed. She had killed Rizhao the bug. Next was Ningbu Ao. The other blood-breed Rizhao knew they had lost. They were unwilling, but there was nothing they could do. They did not understand why Dancer had entered the battlefield at a time like this. A small change had ruined the plan of the two races over the past 400 years. Lu Yi was still helping Ningbu Ao destroy Dancer's strange power when Li Guan attacked again. She killed the second bug Rizhao. Just like the first time, after she attacked, she started to recover. It looked like the injuries she had sustained during the previous battle were not light. In less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Ningbu Ao was back to normal. He dashed toward where the four blood kindred were gathered. His voice came from afar. "Little friend, I, Ningbu Ao, owe you my life." Lu Yi didn't stop. He was heading toward Luoxia. Luoxia stared at Ningbu Ao, who had rushed to the side of the four blood kin Rizhao. His face was filled with envy. In the blink of an eye, an elite's aura was destroyed. Clearly, blood-breed Rizhao had been killed by Ningbu Ao. Ever since Baijin had exposed his identity as a blood-breed and killed Qinzong, Ningbu Ao and the others had been defeated. He was a body cultivator, and he had almost been killed by Rizhao. Now, he could finally hold his head high. How could he show mercy? By the time Li Guan had recovered, the four blood-breed Rizhao had been killed by Ningbu Ao. Li Guan glanced at them. Her body moved with her sword. She started to roam the battlefield. Wherever she went, her sword flashed. One blood-breed and bug race after another was killed. Normally, as a Sunshine Realm cultivator, she wouldn't make things difficult for Yu Yao or Xingsu. However, this was a battlefield. Everyone who wasn't human was an enemy. This wasn't a place where she could be soft-hearted. In this battle, the cultivators of the four galaxies suffered heavy losses. The Blood Tribe and the Insect Tribe had not shown any mercy when they slaughtered the human race. After Ningbu Ao killed the four Blood Tribe members, Rizhao, he started to move. The two Rizhao were like two blazing suns. The bugs and the Blood Tribe members were like snowflakes. Where the blazing suns touched, they melted. Luoxia was anxious. Suppressing the discomfort in his body, he said, "Young friend, please hurry up." He was afraid that if he continued to attack, all the enemies would be wiped out. Since he couldn't kill Rizhao now, killing Yu Yao was also a good thing. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to vent the anger in his heart. "All right." Lu Yi responded, and his spiritual power surged even more violently. Luo Xia's expression became a little twisted, mainly because it was too painful. His whole body felt like it was being roasted over a fire, but the effect was obvious. He gradually regained control of his body. Not long after, Luo Xia laughed. "Here I come." The third Rizhao joined the slaughter. Lu Yi watched the three figures wreaking havoc on the battlefield. He let out a sigh. When Ning Buao killed the Blood Tribe members, Rizhao, the outcome of the battle had been decided. Without Rizhao, no matter how many Blood Tribe and Bug Tribe members there were, they couldn't stop Rizhao's slaughter. The three Rizhao killed wherever they went, but there was a certain pattern to it. Their priority was to kill Yu Yao. But there were only a few Yu Yao on the battlefield. Most of them were constellations, so the Bug Tribe and Blood Tribe Yu Yao were quickly wiped out. Lu Yi returned to the battleship and sat down. His face was a little pale. The explosion of killing by Jin had put a huge burden on his body. The tearing of his flesh was secondary. The main thing was that his entire body, from inside to outside, had been damaged by that huge burden. This kind of damage wasn't serious, but it would take at least 1 or 2 days to recover. Lu Yi jumped and looked at Lu Yi pitifully. She sounded like a spoiled child. She wasn't the only one looking at Lu Yi. Everyone on the battleship was looking at Lu Yi. After all, jumping around like that wasn't a good idea. If Lu Yi could help the three Rizhao escape, he could help them too. Lu Yi sensed the danger in Hua Xi's eyes. If he didn't help her escape, she would teach him a lesson. He quickly explained, "It's not that I don't want to help, but that will damage your bodies. So, don't try it. Plus, Dancer's influence will only last for a day." Old Wan and the others were fine after a day. The three Rizhao were on the battlefield, so the others didn't have to do anything. They just had to wait. The three Rizhao could kill all their enemies. And just as Lu Yi said, activating the talent tree's power would cause them some damage. In any case, they would be able to get rid of it in a day at most, so they might as well wait quietly. Not to mention, there were so many people on the warship. If Lu Yi really wanted to help them one by one, Dancer's power would fade away before he could finish. Really? Qian Wudong turned to look at Wangulu. "Old Wan, have you experienced this before?" Wangulu stammered awkwardly. Yeah. Then he betrayed the other two. "I don't know. You can ask Tao Yen and Zhou Xingji." Not far away, Tao Yen and Zhou Xingji looked bitter. Everyone immediately understood that the three of them had experienced this last time. It was probably after they were swept away by the astral magnetic storm. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so coincidental. However, no one would take the initiative to mention this kind of embarrassing incident. Now, everyone in the three-realm fleet had experienced it. Wan Xiao, who was the strongest and most dignified, even performed a split for Lu Yi. Lu Yi suddenly realized that he wasn't the only one on the battlefield who wasn't affected by Dancer. There was another person who wasn't affected either. That was Yaya. Ever since Yaya fought off Vampire Sunshine and was called back by him, she quickly fell into a deep sleep. She was still sleeping quietly. Lu Yi didn't know if it was because Yaya was asleep that she wasn't affected by Dancer, or if there was something special about her. He couldn't find out. The three Rayas were still cleaning up the battlefield. However, they were very fast and efficient. In less than an hour, the entire battlefield was cleared of insectoids and vampires. When they reunited, the three of them stood side by side. They looked at the messy battlefield, but they didn't feel the joy of victory. Ningbu Ao sighed. "This time, we lost a lot." Although there were some conflicts between the 4 galaxies from time to time, those conflicts were basically within a controllable range and would never lead to a large-scale confrontation between the galaxies. This time, in order to enter the Wanxiang Sea, the 4 galaxies put aside their differences and sincerely worked together to deal with the insectoid nest here. Who would have thought that after this battle, so many cultivators would be killed? The deaths of the constellation cultivators weren't too painful. However, the constellation cultivators weren't the only ones who died. Some Yu Yao had died as well. That was a truly painful loss. We should be glad. If it weren't for little friend Lu's help, this wouldn't have happened. We would have been completely wiped out, Luo Xie said with a sigh. Before today, if someone had told him that in such a large-scale battle involving 3 major races and nearly 10 rikshias, there was a small constellation that could turn the tide and completely change the direction of the battle, Wuxia would definitely have thought that it was a pipe dream and would have given that person a big slap in the face. However, in today's battle, Lu Yi had indeed single-handedly saved the cultivators of the 4 galaxies. If it weren't for Lu Yi, none of them would have survived. Now, at least some of the cultivators from the 3 Raya's allied forces had survived. The insectoids and blood tribes plans for the 4 galaxies had been destroyed. Lu Ye's actions could be said to have saved the lives of the people on the battlefield. However, he had saved the entire 4 galaxies. Billions of lives had been saved. It was the foundation of the 4 galaxies' countless years of accumulation. "We owe him a big favor," Wuxia said with a serious expression. It was said that a life-saving grace should be repaid with one's life. How could he repay such a huge favor? "Let's not talk about this for now. What do you think about Jianghu?" Li Guan asked. Wuxia and Ningbu Ao couldn't help but frown. After a while, Wuxia said, "Shirhanqing is a human. I am sure of that." The Shirhanqing he was talking about was the other Rayas from the Jianghu galaxy. Among the 4 galaxies, the Daluo galaxy had the strongest foundation. It had 4 Rayas. The second was a Pairon, with 3 Rayas. Jianghu and Beixian had only 2 Rayas each. The reason why Wuxia was certain that Shirhanqing was a human was because the 2 of them had crossed paths when they were very young. It could be said that they had grown up through competition. Eventually, they both ascended to the Sunshine Realm and became each other's lifelong rivals. In terms of understanding of Shirhanqing, no one in the 4 Corners star system knew him better than Wuxia. Therefore, it was impossible for Shirhanqing to be a blood tribe member in disguise. Ningbu Ao said, "If I am not mistaken, Bai Jin came to the Quiet Moon system 400 years ago. He was severely injured, and Brother Shirhanqing took him in. He has been in the Quiet Moon system ever since." Wuxia nodded. "That is indeed the case. If that is the case, Bai Jin went to the Quiet Moon system on purpose. The bug race and the blood race must have been plotting against us since then." Li Guan said, "Brother Shirhanqing." Chapter 1605. If he didn't find a way to deal with these vampires lurking in the Quiet Moon Galaxy, they would definitely pose a great threat to the Quiet Moon Galaxy in the future. Furthermore, the vampires could plant a blood seal on other creatures and turn them into blood slaves. So, there might be some human cultivators in the Quiet Moon system who had been secretly taken as blood slaves by the Blood Tribe. If they didn't find these Blood Tribe members and blood slaves, it would affect Quiet Moon's stability. But the Blood Tribe hid very well. It would be very difficult to find them. If they didn't deal with this properly, it might cause dissension in Quiet Moon. If it were anything else, Big Luo, Apeiron, and Beixian could ignore it. After all, it was Quiet Moon's internal affairs, and outsiders couldn't interfere. But since it involved the Blood Tribe, they couldn't just sit by and watch. The 3 Rizhao brothers were silent for a while. They couldn't think of a good solution. Wuxia said, "No matter what, we have to tell Quiet Moon about this situation. Also, Qin Zong died in battle. We have to inform Beixian." "I'll go." Ningbu Ao volunteered. He was a body cultivator. Although he had been injured badly in the previous battle, his skin was tough. So, compared to Wuxia and Li Guan, he was in a better condition. Wuxia and Li Guan had no objections. Ningbu Ao immediately set off. With his powerful cultivation, it wouldn't take long for him to make the trip. Wuxia and Li Guan stayed behind to heal their wounds. After half a day, the singing and dancing Yu Yao on the battlefield gradually recovered. After another half a day, the constellations also recovered. Many cultivators, after regaining control of their bodies, looked embarrassed. The remaining cultivators in the 4 star systems started to clean up the battlefield. The Blood Tribe and the Insect Tribe had been wiped out, and they had suffered great losses. 60% of the cultivators from the 4 star systems had died. This kind of loss was something no one had expected. The bodies of the dead cultivators needed to be collected. Their belongings needed to be collected and buried. There were also the spoils of war left behind by the Blood Tribe and the Insect Tribe. The cultivators of the three realms didn't participate. They just waited quietly on the battleship. Yuan Xiao walked up to Lu Yi and sighed. More than 60 people died. A total of 500 cultivators from the three realms had come this time, and more than 60 had died in this battle. Compared to the casualties in the four realms, this wasn't considered much. However, this was the result of Lu Yi and Yuan Xiao's combined efforts after they sensed that the battle wasn't going well. If Lu Yi and Yuan Xiao hadn't regrouped the scattered cultivators of the three realms in time, and if Lu Yi hadn't activated the Sea of Blood to protect them, the losses would have been much greater. Most of them were cultivators from the Qinglidao world and the Yulua world. On the other hand, less than 10 cultivators from the 9 states had died in the battle. Lu Ye's heart ached. It was not easy for any cultivator of the 9 regions to reach this step. It was not easy for them to be promoted to the constellation and enter the starry sky. They were full of ambition as they rushed to the magnificent 10,000 Elephant Sea. However, they were still halfway there, yet they did not succeed. But this was war, and casualties were unavoidable. However, since the beginning of cultivation, the cultivators of the 9 regions began to experience large and small battles. Therefore, all the cultivators of the 9 regions had long been psychologically prepared to die in the battle. After surviving a disaster, one should be happy, but the atmosphere of the entire battlefield was more solemn. The cultivators silently collected the bones of their companions, and some female cultivators even cried in grief. After 2 days of busy work, the battlefield was finally cleaned up. Wuxia and Li Guan, who had almost recovered from their injuries, personally came to the battleship where Lu Yi was. They solemnly expressed their gratitude to him and said that if Lu Yi needed any help in the future, he should just let them know. Even if it was a mountain of swords or a sea of flames, they would not frown. Lu Yi naturally didn't need their help, but after this battle of salvation, Lu Yi knew that his position in the 4 realms was stable. In the past, he could cooperate with the 4 realms because he had the star map and the methods to go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. The 4 realms had something to ask of him, so it was a cooperation based on interests. Everything that involved interests would not be too stable. But now, things were different. Lu Yi had turned the tide in this battle. The 4 realms owed him a debt of gratitude. This was especially true since the indefinite system was the closest system to the Jade Conch. They were neighbors, but indefinite was much stronger than the Jade Conch. It made people uneasy. After this battle, as long as Lu Yi was still alive, indefinite wouldn't have any designs on the Jade Conch. Lu Yi didn't see Ningbu Ao, so he didn't know where he had gone. He didn't ask. As they were talking, a few Yu Yao arrived. They reported that everything was ready and that they could depart. Li Guan nodded. Then let's go. Just as the Yu Yao were about to leave, Lu Yi stared at one of the women. He raised his hand and called out, "Fellow cultivator, please wait." The Yu Yao stopped. When they saw that Lu Yi was calling out to the woman, they all turned their heads to look at her. The woman looked at Lu Yi, puzzled. "Fellow cultivator Lu, what are your orders?" Lu Yi shook his head. "I wouldn't dare give you orders. I just want to know which system you are from." The woman said, "I am from the Quiet Moon system." Lu Yi thought I knew it. Wuxia chuckled. Sister Feng is one of the 3 beauties of the Quiet Moon system. Little friend Lu, are you interested in her? The woman with the surname Feng blushed. She pouted playfully at Wuxia. "Senior brother, please don't joke around. Fellow cultivator Lu must have something important to say." "It is indeed important." Lu Yi nodded. He didn't look at her. Instead, he looked at Wuxia and Li Guan. "Do you two trust me?" Wuxia didn't know why Lu Yi had suddenly asked this, but he nodded. "If it weren't for you, everyone would have died today." "Of course, I trust you," Lu Yi said. "In that case, please kill her, Elder Luo." Wuxia was shocked. He couldn't believe his ears. What? Yu Yao and the other Yu Yao who had come with the woman surnamed Feng also looked at Lu Yi in shock. However, they quickly understood something and looked at the woman surnamed Feng with bewilderment in their eyes. Wuxia frowned. "Little friend, is there something wrong?" He wasn't an idiot. There was no reason for Lu Yi to ask him to kill someone for no reason. Moreover, it was to kill such a delicate woman. Jinghue's side had revealed many hidden blood tribe members, so he naturally made the connection. Are you sure? Li Guan turned to look at Lu Yi with a serious expression. Lu Yi nodded. Li Guan hesitated for a moment. Then, he looked at the woman with the surname Feng with a stern expression. The woman's expression changed drastically. She silently circulated her magic power while on the verge of tears. Fellow cultivator Lu, I haven't offended you, have I? Why do you want senior brother Luo to kill me? Lu Yi looked at her calmly. Although he could confirm that she was a blood tribe member, he didn't want to verify it. That was because it was useless to rely on words alone. No one would expose their true identity in a situation like this. Even if he used force on her, it would be useless. The hum of a sword suddenly rang out. A sword light flashed in front of Li Guan and attacked the woman. The woman with the surname Feng was shocked. She screamed and tried to retreat. However, Yu Yao's strength was worlds apart from Ri Zhao's. Li Guan was also a sword cultivator known for his killing. Now that they were so close, how could she dodge his attack? When the sword light disappeared, Li Guan was still standing in his original spot as if he had never moved. However, the woman with the surname Feng had a miserable expression. She lowered her head and looked at her chest. On her snow-white clothes, a smear of red slowly bloomed like a blood-red flower. Her powerful vitality was rapidly weakening. Luo Xie's heart thumped wildly. Although he could roughly guess why Lu Yi wanted him to kill the woman, he couldn't do it before he was sure. After all, the woman with the surname Feng was from Jianghu. He was from Zenith Heaven. It wouldn't be good for him to overstep his boundaries. However, he didn't expect Li Guan to be so decisive. As expected of a sword cultivator who acted swiftly and decisively, Luo Xie was ashamed of his lack of decisiveness. Of course, it could also be said that he was brainless. If he killed the wrong person, he wouldn't know how to explain it to Jianghu. Under the watchful eyes of many, the woman with the surname Feng's vitality completely dissipated. She turned into a corpse. Soon, Yu Yao and Luo Xie's expressions changed. That was because the woman with the surname Feng's corpse didn't show any signs of change. She still looked the same as before her death. Luo Xie's heart thumped. He really killed the wrong person. Logically speaking, if the woman with the surname Feng was really a blood kindred who used a secret technique to disguise herself, she should have revealed her true self after her death. That was because once a blood kindred died, the secret technique couldn't be maintained. Naturally, her true self would be exposed. However, the woman with the surname Feng still maintained her appearance when she was alive. That meant that she had always been like this and wasn't a blood kindred disguise. Didn't this mean that he had killed the wrong person? Lu Yi was also puzzled. He flashed forward and carefully sized up the woman with the surname Feng. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. He raised his hand and took off a necklace from her neck. The necklace's chain was snow-white. He didn't know what it was made of, but the pendant was a blood-red heart-shaped object. As the object was taken off, the woman with the surname Feng's corpse quickly changed. Her body became much more slender. Her exposed skin turned blood-red, and her 2 ears became sharp. The group of people looked on helplessly, each of them wearing an ugly expression. During the previous battle, some quiet moon cultivators had exposed their true selves. Everyone thought that there would be no more blood kindred disguises. Who would have thought that there would be more? This was undoubtedly a little dark under the lamp. After all, no one would have thought that there would be more blood kindred hiding under the premise that the blood kindred and the insect race had the absolute advantage. If Lu Yi hadn't seen through the truth at a glance, no one would have believed that the woman with the surname Feng was also a blood kindred. After all, she was very famous in the Quiet Moon Galaxy. Luo Xie wasn't joking when he said that she was one of the 3 beauties of the Quiet Moon Galaxy. Lu Yi looked at the heart-shaped pendant in his hand. He was sure that it was a treasure. It was probably a treasure that could help maintain the woman's body. Therefore, even if she died, the woman with the surname Feng didn't expose her true self. Chapter 1606. In front of the warship, Li Guan looked at Lu Yi and asked, "Young friend, can you identify the blood tribe?" Lu Yi had only glanced at the woman surnamed Feng, but he had recognized her as a blood tribe member. His eyesight was extraordinary. She and Luoxia hadn't seen any flaws in her disguise at all. Under normal circumstances, after a blood tribe member used a secret technique to disguise themselves as a human, they wouldn't be exposed unless they were thoroughly investigated. However, an overly thorough investigation was the same as prying into a cultivator's secrets. This was disrespectful to any cultivator. In the cultivation world, even a master wouldn't do such a thing to a disciple. Li Guan didn't know how Lu Yi, a mere constellation member, could tell. Lu Yi naturally didn't rely on his eyesight to identify a blood tribe member, but on his intuition. He could sense Bai Jin's abnormality with Riri, but he didn't have any experience in this area when he first met Bai Jin, so he didn't think too much about it. However, now that he had experience, things were naturally different. As soon as this woman appeared in front of Lu Yi sensed something was wrong and immediately identified her as a blood tribe member. However, there was no need to explain this matter too much, so he immediately nodded. Yes. Li Guan and Luoxia exchanged a glance, suddenly realizing that the problem that had troubled them was easily solved. They had been wondering how to find the hidden blood tribe member on Jingyue's side. Now that Lu Yi had this ability, things were much simpler. "I'll gather everyone here," Luoxia said, and his divine sense surged, sending out orders everywhere. Soon, the figures of many cultivators appeared on the warships and gathered in the starry sky. There weren't many of them, only about 1,500 people. When this battle began, each of the 4 galaxies had sent 1,000 people, a total of 4,000 cultivators. Riri alone had 5, and Yu Yao had more than 100. Now, this number had shrunk significantly, and only 2 Riri were here. "Young friend, please take a look." Luoxia looked seriously at Lu Yi. Lu Yi nodded, and his figure began to move, shuttling back and forth among the 1,500 cultivators. No one knew what he was doing, but it was a spectacle. After a long while, Lu Yi returned, bringing with him a young man with a slightly panicked expression. "Just one?" Luoxia asked, looking at the young man. The young man's body trembled like a sieve, as if he didn't know what had happened. However, he had a bad feeling that Lu Yi had brought him out like this. "No." Lu Yi shook his head and pointed at the crowd. "This is..." He then pointed in another direction. There's also this." Every time he pointed, a beam of sword chi would shoot out from Li Guan's side, striking the person Lu Yi pointed at with unerring accuracy. In this situation, whoever Lu Yi pointed at would die. He pointed at 5 people in a row, and all 5 of them died without exception. After they died, the 5 cultivators revealed their blood clan true bodies, causing the cultivators around them to cry out in alarm. When one of the Yu Yao cultivators was killed by Li Guan, Lu Yi sensed that the young man beside her trembled, as if he had broken free of something. She immediately understood that her suspicions were correct. This young man was not a member of the blood kindred, but he had some connections with the blood kindred, so the feeling he gave off was different from that of a real blood kindred. "What's up with this kid?" Luoxia looked at the young man beside Lu Yi in confusion, wondering why Lu Yi had brought him out alone. Lu Yi looked at the young man. He should have been implanted with a blood seal by the blood kindred. The blood kindred usually use this method to subdue blood slaves. The young man immediately nodded like he was pounding garlic. "You're right. Martial Uncle's Sun Hai implanted a blood seal in me, so I have no choice but to obey his orders." The Sun Hai he spoke of was most likely the Yu Yao that Li Guan had killed earlier. The death of a blood kindred naturally freed the blood slaves. There should be a few more blood slaves like this young man. Lu Yi had sensed them earlier, but he hadn't brought them out. No wonder the blood kindred issued a bounty for you. Little friend, your understanding of the blood kindred is even greater than mine. Luoxia exclaimed in admiration. Lu Ye's ability was the bane of the blood kindred. No matter how the blood kindred disguised themselves, they couldn't escape his eyes. The blood kindred naturally feared such an ability, so it was understandable that they issued a bounty for him. What he didn't know was that the Blood Kindred had issued the bounty only because of Lu Ye's actions in the Alpha origin stage. They were completely unaware of Lu Ye's current abilities. If they had known that Lu Yi possessed an enormous amount of divinity, the Blood Kindred wouldn't have simply issued a bounty for him. Many Blood Kindred would have searched the entire starry sky for him. The few remaining Blood Kindred hidden in the Cultivator Alliance were also eliminated. The fleet of warships set sail and headed in the direction of Indefinite. Li Guan assumed command, and Luo Xie went ahead first. Ningbu Ao had already left, preparing to report the battle situation to the Four Directions star system and inform Jingyue about the Blood Kindred. Now that Lu Yi had displayed the ability to see through the Blood Kindred's disguise, Luo Xie naturally had to make a trip to Jingyue. He planned to ask Shi Hanqing to cooperate and borrow Lu Ye's ability to find all the Blood Kindred hiding in Jingyue. Only then would the Four Directions star system stability not be affected by the Blood Kindred. If they missed this opportunity, it would be difficult to find the Blood Kindred in the future. As the fleet sailed, the cultivators of the three realms put away their star boats and boarded the warships. This saved them a lot of trouble. The warship that Lu Yi was on had visitors from time to time. First, Luo Shenxi came to pay a visit. This time, he did not show any intention of sparring with Lu Yi. Perhaps it was because Luo Xie had told him before, or perhaps he had recognized the gap between him and Lu Yi. This saved Lu Yi a lot of trouble. He had originally planned to let Luo Shenxi experience the dangers of the world if he still couldn't forget about him. Luo Shenxi was very interested in the Wanxiang Sea because he was going to follow Lu Yi to the Wanxiang Sea. Naturally, he wanted to ask Lu Yi for more information about the Wanxiang Sea. After Luo Shenxi, Hua Cheng came with Du Lang. Luo Shenxi was able to survive the previous battle mainly because his strength was not bad. Among the four-way galaxies, he was the strongest in the constellation realm. Furthermore, he had many treasures on him, so he naturally had the ability to protect himself in such a battle. Hua Cheng was also safe because of his strength. Although he was old, he was still a late-stage Moon Jade realm cultivator. The sun couldn't shine on the battlefield, so it was actually very difficult for a late-stage Moon Jade realm cultivator like him to die in battle. Du Lang was arranged to be on duty in the central warship because of Lu Yi, which saved his life. Otherwise, as an early-stage constellation realm cultivator, it would have been very difficult for him to survive the previous battle. Hua Cheng had brought Du Lang over for no other reason than to express his gratitude. Moreover, Du Lang was also one of the designated candidates for this trip to the Wanxiang Sea. There were also a few constellation realm cultivators from the Scarlet Sky continent accompanying him. When they reached the Wanxiang Sea in the future, they would need Lu Ye's help. After Hua Cheng and his disciple left, Lu Yi finally had the time to cultivate. He wasn't the only one. All the cultivators of the three realms, except for Luan Xiaoa, were basically cultivating intensely. After witnessing the cruelty of such a battle with their own eyes and participating in it, the cultivators understood the cruelty of the battle in the universe and the importance of one's own strength. If they wanted to survive in the universe, they had to continuously improve their strength. The journey was peaceful. The battlefield was located at the edge of the Indefinite Galaxy's territory, so the fleet entered the Indefinite Galaxy in just a few days. However, it would take some time to rush to the Indefinite Realm. When Lu Yi first rushed here from the Indefinite Realm, it took him a full 3 months. At that time, Yu Yao had personally escorted him. Although the warship speed was very fast, it was almost the same as Yu Yao's. It wasn't that it couldn't go faster, but it would consume even more spirit jades. Thus, by the time the warship arrived at the Indefinite Realm, 3 months had already passed. The fleet broke through the clouds and landed on a huge platform in an orderly manner. On the central warship, Li Guan personally accompanied Lu Yi as he walked out. At a glance, Lu Yi was slightly taken aback. This was because not far away, there were 4 figures standing side by side. He recognized 2 of them. They were the Realm Lord of the Indefinite Realm, Jiang Shang, and Big Luo Rizhao, Luo Xie. Although he didn't recognize the other 2, how could they be ordinary when they stood together with Jiang Shang and Luo Xie? There was no doubt that they were all Rizhao. Li Guan promptly explained. The person standing to the left of senior brother Jianghu is Quiet Moon's Shi. The one standing next to senior brother Luo is Beishuan's senior sister Qin Yi. The 4 Rizhao, 3 men and 1 woman, included the 4 directions galaxies. It could be said that this was the lineup of the strongest cultivators in the 4 directions galaxies. Even if they were just standing there and didn't emit any of the Rizhao's power, they still exuded a sense of majesty. These 4 people were standing here to welcome him. Lu Yi knew that his efforts to turn the tide would definitely make the 4 directions galaxies have a good impression of him, but he didn't expect to receive such a warm welcome. When they saw him appear, the 4 people led by Jianghu cupped their fists and bowed to Lu Yi. Jianghu's loud voice rang out. The 4 directions galaxies' allied forces failed to break through the insect nest and were almost annihilated. Fortunately, fellow Taoist Lu Ye of the 9 heavens turned the tide and saved the cultivators of the 4 directions galaxies. This kindness is akin to giving birth to a new life. The cultivators of the 4 directions galaxies will remember this kindness forever. His loud voice rang out in all directions. At this moment, on the warships, in the indefinite sacred palace and throughout the indefinite realm, all the cultivators, regardless of their cultivation base, saluted Lu Yi and shouted in unison, "We will never forget this kindness forever." Chapter 1607. On the battleship, Lu Yi looked calm. He bowed in the direction of the 4 Rizhao cultivators and said, "It was fate that brought us together. It wasn't my work." "You're overstating it." Jianghu smiled. "You don't have to be so humble. We've already learned about the details of the battle. If it weren't for you, the 4 star systems would have been wiped out." In a battle with such a huge disparity in power, the dancer's sudden appearance had disrupted the battle. That had given the cultivators from the 4 star systems a chance to catch their breath. At first, Luo Xie and Ningbu Ao thought the dancer had come by accident. But when they saw Lu Yi playing the Bone Sun, they realized Lu Yi had lured the dancer there. If that was all, it wouldn't have affected the battle much. After all, everyone on the battlefield had been affected by the dancer's power. Once the dancer left, the strange power would disappear, and the battle would go back to normal. But Lu Yi had the ability to remove the dancer's power. First, he freed Li Guan, then Ningbu Ao and Luo Xie. That was the key to turning the tide of the battle. The dancer's power was something even the Rizhao cultivators from the 3 races couldn't resist, but Lu Yi could. What kind of power was that? Even Li Guan and the others, who had personally experienced it, couldn't say for sure. But Mu Rong had no doubt that a Constellation Realm cultivator like Lu Yi could use such a miraculous skill. He had saved their lives and saved the world. He deserved the Rizhao cultivators' solemn salute. "Little friend, the Holy Palace has already prepared a banquet to welcome you and your friends. I hope you'll come." Jianghu gestured with his hand. It wasn't a celebratory feast. Although they'd won the battle, they'd lost too many people. Even one of the Rizhao cultivators had died. There was nothing to celebrate. But they'd won the battle. They couldn't not show their gratitude. Holding a feast for Lu Yi and the others was the best choice. Lu Yi couldn't refuse the Rizhao cultivators' hospitality. He stepped forward and entered with Jianghu and the others. A moment later, the Rizhao cultivators gathered in the main hall of Indefinite Holy Palace. Aside from the Rizhao cultivators from the 4 star systems, there was only Lu Yi and Luan Xiao and Yu Yao. Other than that, there were only the maids serving them. No one else was there. On the contrary, the outside of the hall was extraordinarily lively. Tables filled the entire plaza. The cultivators from the 4 galaxies and the 3 realms who had returned victorious were arranged here. The reason for this arrangement was naturally because there wasn't enough space in the hall. There were more than 400 cultivators from the 3 realms alone, and 1,500 cultivators from the 4 galaxies. In total, there were 2,000 people. Although the hall was spacious, it couldn't accommodate so many people drinking and having fun together. Therefore, they could only arrange for him to stay outside. This was a good opportunity for them to get acquainted with each other. Many of them were going to enter the Wanxiang Sea. Getting to know each other in advance would allow them to help each other when they reached the Wanxiang Sea. Wan Xiao was very nervous. Before participating in that great battle, she had never seen Nicho before. Even though she could feel Nicho's power from afar during the battle, she didn't need to be in close contact with him. But now, it was different. There were only 8 people sitting in the hall. Other than Lu Yi, the other 6 were all sunshine-level cultivators. She discreetly sized Lu Yi up from the corner of her eyes. She saw that this kid was actually calmly chatting with the Nicho from the 4 galaxies. It was as if he didn't show any signs of fear despite the huge difference in strength between them. Wan Xiao was extremely impressed. It was amazing for a constellation cultivator to have such a temperament. If she didn't know that Lu Yi was from a newly promoted large realm like the 9 heavens, Wan Xiao would have thought that he was from some top realm. He had already seen the might of the Nicho. Otherwise, how could he not be afraid at all? If she had been in the constellation realm, she wouldn't have been able to speak properly in front of so many Nicho. If possible, Wan Xiao would rather be outside the hall and have fun with the 3 realms cultivators. It would be easier that way. However, as the leader of the 3 realms fleet and the only Yu Yao accompanying them, how could she stay out of this at a time like this? Wan Xiao guessed that these Nicho probably treated her as Lu Ye's elder, which was why they invited her in. Qin Yi must have sensed her nervousness and looked over with a smile. Junior martial sister Luan, you're also in the late stage of the Yu Yao realm. Do you have any doubts about advancing to the Nicho level? If you do, you can talk to me about it later. My experience may not be suitable for you, but other people's jade can be used to polish a rock. It's always good to learn from them. Wan Xiao's expression brightened, and she almost cried. For countless years, the Yu Yao of Jade Conch had been troubled by the problem of advancing to the Nicho level. Countless generations of cultivators had explored it bit by bit, but they still couldn't find the main point. Unfortunately, Jade Conch didn't have any experience or guidance left behind by their ancestors. This time, she followed them to the Wanxiang Sea to see if she could find an opportunity to seek guidance from a Nicho. Who would have thought that her wish would come true before they even reached the Wanxiang Sea? Moreover, the other party was the one who brought it up. Wan Xiao was momentarily shaken, but she quickly calmed herself down. She looked at Qin Yi gratefully. There are indeed many things that I don't understand. Since senior martial sister is so kind, I won't stand on ceremony. I'll definitely have something to ask of senior martial sister later. No problem. Qin Yi smiled and nodded. She then chatted with Wan Xiao about a few other things. Only then did Wan Xiao gradually relax. On the other side, Jiang Shang asked about the bone sun because they were too curious about it. They didn't understand why it could attract the dancers. What exactly is that bone sun? Actually, I don't know either. There was nothing to hide about the bone sun, so Lu Yi explained. It's a treasure I obtained from the Great Wheel of Fortune when I passed by the Long Cloud Galaxy. The Great Wheel of Fortune? The Nichos were shocked. They had obviously heard of this starry sky treasure before. The Long Cloud Galaxy is really lucky. The Great Wheel of Fortune actually descended there. Wuxia looked envious. He only regretted that this treasure didn't descend in his galaxy. Wan Xiao was confused and looked at Lu Yi curiously. Lu Yi gave a simple explanation. Only then did Wan Xiao understand what the Great Wheel of Fortune was. She didn't expect there to be such a strange starry sky treasure in this world. When I obtained the bone sun, I inadvertently discovered that this treasure had a great attraction to star beasts. Once I blew it, as long as there were star beasts in the nearby starry sky, they would inevitably be attracted. So after using it twice, I didn't use it again. This time, I had no choice but to give it a try, but I didn't expect it to actually attract the dancers. The main reason was that Lu Yi had seen the dancers escape into the desolate star field. Without this information, Lu Yi wouldn't have thought of using the bone sun. At that time, only Dancer's strange power could turn the tide of the battle. Even if the terrifying blue bird was lured over, it was useless. After the dancers were attracted, they kept chasing me. It seemed like they were very interested in the bone sun. I had no choice but to give it to them. After they got the bone sun, they left. I think that thing will help with their injuries. Luo sighed. It is a shame that such a magical treasure was lost. Lu Yi said, if it can save lives, then it is not a shame. No matter how good the treasure was, it was useless if they lost their lives. Using the bone sun to trade for the lives of hundreds of people in the three realms, Lu Yi thought it was a good deal. He had also saved many people in the Four Corners Galaxy. Little friend is open-minded, you're right. Luo laughed and raised his cup. It was this old master who was short-sighted. Lu Yi picked up his cup and drank with him. Ningbu Ao was more interested in the Wheel of Good Fortune. Little friend, I heard Brother Jiangshang mention that if you want to go to the Thousand Elephant Sea, you have to go through a long cloud system. Is that long cloud system where the Wheel of Good Fortune will descend? I wonder if the Great Wheel of Fortune is still around. Ningbu Ao stroked his chin as he thought about it. If it was still around, then when they entered the 10,000 Elephant Sea and passed by the Long Cloud Galaxy, they could pay it a visit and see what their luck was like. There were many treasures in the universe, but there were very few treasures like the Great Wheel of Fortune. If they were lucky enough, paying a visit to the Great Wheel of Fortune could give them many benefits. It was not an exaggeration to say that they could become rich overnight. It has been a few years. It is probably gone, Lu Yi replied. Although he did not know how long the Great Wheel of Fortune would stay there for, it was unlikely that it would stay there for a few years. Treasures like that came and went without a trace. That is a shame. Ningbu Ao shook his head. He didn't have much of an opinion. Although the Wheel of Fortune depended on one's luck, there was a pattern to it. The stronger a person was, the lower their chances of getting something good out of it. In fact, bad luck was more common. That was especially true of Sunshine. If he entered, bad luck would befall him. Yu Yao was a bit better off. Usually, the ones who got the benefits were the constellations. While they were talking, a small figure suddenly rushed into the hall. Lu Yi turned his head and saw Yaya running toward him. He chased after her for a while, but she could not catch up. She stood outside the hall with a helpless expression. Daddy! Yaya ran over and sat in Lu Ye's arms. Lu Yi gave Yi a look, and only then did he leave. Inside the hall, a few of the Sunshine Warriors looked at Yaya with great interest. They had learned from Jiangshang that this little person, who looked like a child, was a Sunshine Warrior. For some reason, she did not reveal her cultivation. She even called Lu Yi Daddy. This kind of strange thing was rare, but it was not good to ask about it. Luan Xiao's expression was equally strange, because before Yaya revealed her strength as Rizhao, she really thought that she was just a child. But on that battlefield, Yaya suddenly erupted, revealing her Rizhao cultivation without a doubt, and even repelling a vampire, Rizhao. Luan Xiao saw it with her own eyes. Chapter 1608. Luan Xiao had always thought that she was the leader of the fleet of the three realms. Who would have thought that there was a sleeping ancient beast right under her nose? When she saw Yaya defeat Nicho of the Blood Clan, she almost thought that she was dreaming. Moreover, Luan Xiao felt that Yaya was not an ordinary Nicho, because when she fought with Nicho of the Blood Clan, she only needed one punch to shatter his arms. If Nicho of the Blood Clan had not retreated quickly, he would have been killed on the spot. This showed Yaya's strength. The fruits outside don't taste good. Yaya pouted, her bright eyes staring at the spirit fruits on the table in front of Lu Yi. The quality of the spirit fruits in the main hall was naturally better than those outside. They were already the best spirit fruits that could be found in the infinite realm. Usually, only the most distinguished guests would use them. Although the spirit fruits outside were not bad, they were undoubtedly inferior to those in the main hall. Yaya's mouth was very crafty, and her nose was also very sensitive. After smelling the fruit fragrance here, she was not interested in the spirit fruits outside. Lu Yi laughed and took a spirit fruit for her. Eat it yourself. Yaya took it but did not eat it. Instead, she put it into her storage ring. She was not satisfied. Her small hands moved continuously, and the spirit fruits in front of Lu Yi were all cleaned out. Then she turned to look at Luoxia. Lu Yi knew that something was wrong. Just as he was about to restrain her, Yaya had already rushed out and stared at Luoxia. Do you want to eat? Wuxia replied with a smile, "If you want to eat, take them all." Yaya would not be polite with him. She immediately took all the spirit fruits in front of Wuxia, and then ran to Shirhanqing and asked the same thing. "Do you want to eat?" One by one, it did not take long for all the spirit fruits on the tables to be cleaned out by Yaya. Only then did she return to Lu Ye's side in satisfaction. She took out a bright red fruit from her storage ring and ate it with relish. Lu Yi lowered his head and drank, secretly deciding that he would have to discuss with Li Shang later. Yaya's upbringing seemed to be a little problematic. The welcome banquet only ended after half a day of eating and drinking. At night, the cultivators of the three realms were arranged to stay. There were still some things that needed to be dealt with in the Four Corners system, so the three realms fleet would have to wait for a few days before they could set off. It was just a few days, so Lu Yi wasn't in a hurry. In a Pyrrhon sleeping quarters, Lu Yi was immersed in his battle against Qin Chang. When he killed Bai Jin, he'd used his dual saber secret technique, but in retrospect, he felt that it wasn't perfect enough. Compared to Qin Chang's windmill, it was like heaven and earth. However, it was undeniable that the double-blade secret technique was indeed terrifying. If he wanted to improve further, he would have to fight the grasshopper himself. Moments later, Qing Fu was forced to use her dual saber secret technique again. Lu Yi also resisted with his windmill, but he was defeated after 3 breaths. Enduring the pain in his head, Lu Yi thought back to what had just happened and came to a realization. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Lu Yi released his divine sense and was surprised when he realized who was knocking on the door. He was the only one living in this sleeping chamber. He thought that either Yi would come to find him or Hua Ci would come to teach him a lesson. He never expected that it was neither Yi nor Hua Ci, but another woman. A woman he never expected to see. Standing up and tidying his clothes, Lu Yi opened the door. A woman with a graceful temperament and a voluptuous figure entered his sight. At first glance, the woman looked to be in her 30s, but upon closer inspection, she seemed to be in her 20s. She had the charm of a mature woman, but did not lose the charm of a young woman. Realm Lord Qin. Lu Yi bowed. The person who came to find him in the middle of the night was actually Qin Yi of Beixian Galaxy. There were only 2 Rizhao in the entire Beixian Galaxy. After Qin Zong died, Qin Yi was the only one left. It could be said that one of the 2 pillars of Beixian Galaxy had fallen. When the news reached Beixian Galaxy, the whole of Beixian Galaxy was mourning. "Call me senior sister." Qin Yi smiled. Lu Yi complied, "Senior sister Qin." Qin Yi's Rizhao cultivation was unknown, so it was understandable for Lu Yi to call her senior. However, if she wanted him to call her senior sister, it was obviously more cordial. "Senior sister, why are you here?" Lu Yi asked. Qin Yi said, "What, you want me to stand outside and talk?" Lu Yi hurriedly said, "Senior sister, please come in." As he said that, he stepped aside. Qin Yi stepped in, and Lu Yi could not close the door. A man and a woman alone in the middle of the night. If word got out, people would misunderstand, so he followed her in. Qin Yi had already sat down, and Lu Yi hurriedly served her tea and sat beside her. He could not figure out the purpose of this woman's visit in the middle of the night. After all, the 2 of them had not interacted before, and only exchanged a few words at the banquet. Qin Yi looked around, then her gaze landed on him. After looking at him seriously for a while, she suddenly sighed and said, "When I took him in as my disciple, he was around your age, but his cultivation was much weaker than yours. He was only a small true Lake Realm cultivator back then." Lu Yi frowned. He did not know what she was talking about. Qin Yi continued, "Back then, there were hundreds of top clans in Beixian who recommended their disciples, but I chose him because I saw a possibility in him. Reality proved that my vision was right. He eventually grew to Rizhao's level." Lu Yi suddenly understood who Qin Yi was talking about. It was Qin Zong, who died on the battlefield. There were only 2 Rizhao in Beixian. Other than Qin Yi, there was only Qin Zong. Qin Zong was actually Qin Yi's disciple? As if she saw the surprise in Lu Ye's eyes, Qin Yi smiled. "Qin Zong and I are Taoist companions. You should have heard about this." Lu Yi nodded, his mind a little confused. These two were master and disciple and Taoist companions. This relationship was really messy. Wasn't Qin Yi obviously an old cow eating young grass? He really could not tell that this graceful and dignified woman had such an appetite. But then again, in the cultivation world, strength was always the most important thing. Age and seniority were secondary in front of strength. But if that was the case, why did Qin Yi not look sad at all? Logically speaking, since they were master and disciple and Taoist companions, Qin Yi should be very sad about Qinzong's death. But since seeing her today until now, Lu Yi did not see any abnormality. She looked like she was fine. Qin Yi said slowly, "The dead cannot be revived. One of the two Rizhao in Beixian is gone, and I am the only one supporting it. Cultivators are not mortals. In their lives, they have experienced too many deaths. There are always things that need to be persevered, and there are always times when one cannot show one's weakness." Lu Yi finally understood that it was not that Qin Yi was not sad, but that she could not show it. Looking at her eyes carefully, Lu Yi realized that this Rizhao's eyes did not have much spirit. It was as if there was a thick sadness hidden in them that could not be dissolved. He was speechless for a moment. Qinzong was killed by Bai Jin's sneak attack. You killed Bai Jin, which is equivalent to avenging Qinzong's blood. Senior sister thanks you here. As she spoke, Qin Yi stood up and bowed to Lu Yi. Her entire body was almost squatting down. Lu Yi finally understood why she came to find him. She was obviously here to thank him because he killed Bai Jin and avenged Qinzong's death. Lu Yi quickly raised his hand to support her. Senior sister, you are too serious. Even if I did not do anything, Bai Jin would have been killed by senior sister Li Guan. Qin Yi stood up and shook her head. If it were not for you, the 4 galaxies' battleships would have been completely annihilated. What happened after that would not have happened. Today, I took the liberty to visit you. As his widow, I am here to express my gratitude on behalf of my late husband. As she spoke, she flipped her hand again, and a radiant lotus appeared in her palm. Lu Yi could feel a strange energy fluctuation from the lotus. This companion moon lotus is a magic treasure grade spirit treasure, and was also a gift he gave me back then. Now that things have changed, keeping it will only cause sorrow. If junior brother doesn't mind, I'll give it to you. If you don't mind, senior sister can only destroy it. Since she had already said so, how could Lu Yi refuse? Could it be that he really had to watch Qin Yi destroy this spirit treasure? He quickly said, "Since senior sister is giving it to me, junior brother will accept it." Spirit treasures were hard to come by. They were often many times more valuable than treasures of the same quality. Lu Yi did not know what kind of power this accompanying moon lotus had, but it was definitely not bad. Spirit treasures were also divided into magic treasures and spirit treasures. Even if a cultivator was just a star constellation, they could activate the power of a magic treasure-level spirit treasure. It was not like ordinary magic treasures. Even if a star constellation had it, they could not activate it. Lu Yi himself did not have much need for this spirit treasure. He had the spirit-suppressing pagoda in his divine sea. Although the spirit-suppressing pagoda's quality was not enough in the starry sky, he still had the specter ship. Even a spirit race like Li Shang could not do anything to his divine sea, let alone others. This thing was not bad for Qi. He was a spirit body. It was suitable for her. Lu Yi killed Bai Jin. Qin Yi naturally had to express her gratitude. This accompanying moon lotus was undoubtedly her gift. Seeing Lu Yi accept the accompanying moon lotus, Qin Yi nodded in satisfaction. She then took out a pitch-black token and handed it to Lu Yi. Lu Yi took it suspiciously. "This is," Qin Yi explained, "this time, there will be a late-stage moon jade from the northern Xian star system accompanying you. If you have any difficulties in the Myriad Sea, you can use this token to conscript all the cultivators in the northern Xian star system. Seeing this token is like seeing me. All the cultivators in the northern Xian star system will have to obey my orders." Lu Yi was overjoyed. He valued this token more than the accompanying moon lotus. After all, anything could happen in a place like the Myriad Sea. If the cultivators of the three realms were bullied one day and Luan Xiao could not handle it, he would have no one to ask for help. He could not count on Tang Jun. If Luan Xiao could not handle it, Tang Jun would be even more unreliable. A late-stage moon jade from the northern Xian star system should be quite strong. Moreover, this token could conscript all the cultivators in the northern Xian star system. This meant that Lu Yi had a natural ally. Qin Yi's gift was really big. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.